Good evening and welcome to the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education regular meeting for Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. Has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Would you please call the roll?
Evans?
Here.
Garner?
Here.
Herzog?
Here.
Olmsted?
Here.
Peschel? Szilagyi?
Here.
Carlin?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Dr. Cartwright.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we move on to board and administrative reports, starting with the board president report. I have a short report tonight, but I know that when you start thanking people, it's very easy to forget people, and so if you'll bear with me, I decided to write out my remarks more fully tonight. First of all, I want to thank all of the voters of the Oshkosh Area School District who turned out yesterday and approved the 2 referendum questions that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education had chosen to place on the ballot, seeking community input for the future of our district. I am so happy for our students, their families, our staff, and our community who will benefit from these votes for decades to come. At least 15 schools in our district will benefit from the second question related to capital improvements, from infrastructure to safety and security improvements. The board recognizes that we live in an unprecedented time with challenges and frustrations. Nonetheless, the majority of voters opted to invest in the education of our children and our community. I am deeply touched by this support. There are many people I want to thank for supporting the 2 referendum questions. The Facilities Advisory Committee, which was formed in September of 2019 under the leadership of our Superintendent, Dr. Vicki Cartwright, to develop a long-range facilities plan for the district. All district staff, all who attended listening sessions or community presentations to gain information on the 2 questions. Voters who stood in line yesterday to vote or made special effort to get their ballots in the mail or to deliver them to City Hall. Our executive team, some with visible roles and some behind the scenes. Dave Gundlach, who in many ways was the face of the referendum along with Superintendent Cartwright, along with Andy Jones, Julie Conrad, Kim Brown, Matt Kemmerer, Linda Piron, Belinda Pinkston, Jim Fox, Drew Nehans, and Katie Niehaus, Katie Niemann, who did a lot of behind-the-scenes work on getting the printed materials out to internal and external customers. I especially want to thank our superintendent, Dr. Vicki Cartwright, for her leadership, vision, and tireless efforts on behalf of all district students over the last 2+ years in laying the foundation for yesterday's ballot question. Those questions didn't just appear. There was a lot of work that went on over the last 2 years to prepare our board, our staff, our community for that vote for our future. A proverb states that it takes a village to raise a child. Our Oshkosh village made a strong commitment yesterday to all of our children. Thank you to our Oshkosh village. Next, we have the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Herzog, and thank you very much for those very kind words. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a moment, but we're very, very grateful to our community and to all of our staff because we know that our staff play a huge role in this along with many other people. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're going to go ahead and get started right away. Our ALP students recently received a surprise Halloween treat as staff members made socially distanced visits to show that they care. Plus, to keep the festive celebration going, students were able to log onto a classroom meet to play games and have a virtual costume contest. Our Community Learning Center programs recently hosted a free food truck night. The event aimed to help students and entire families by providing them with a delicious free meal and a unique socially distanced way to stay connected to the CLC program. A big thank you to Rodney's Cafe, Dee Dee's Barbecue, and Mr. and Mrs. Egg Roll for helping make the event possible. At this time, I would like to again take a moment to provide an update related to our E-Academy program. This week, the district announced a mid-year enrollment and unenrollment for E-Academy, which will take place November 9th through December 4th. Families interested in changing their enrollment, either enrolling into or out of E-Academy for the 2020-21 second semester, are invited to learn more and to make the right choice for their children. Families are advised to read the many resources available on the E-Academy website to fully understand what a change could mean for your child or children. And so, without further ado, we just want to make sure that we take a moment to say thank you. The words thank you cannot express the level of appreciation that we have for our community and supporting the district and more importantly, our students going forward. This truly is an example of our community really being committed to the school district. We are really looking forward to partnering with our community as we go forward in order to build our future. The level of support that they provided to us is something that it just demonstrates that our community truly cares about our children. Again, I can't say enough to our community for their support. I can't say enough to all of the employees that worked behind the scenes. Those were in the front of the scenes. Definitely to the executive team, as Dr. Herzog previously mentioned, about a variety of different roles that were there. And there's one other person or group that I want to call special attention to. Board, thank you. Thank you for having the faith and the trust that the decision you made this past summer in order to go forward and to allow our voters and our community to make that decision for us. Thank you for having that courage, and thank you for your involvement in leading up to this point. And right now, we are extremely grateful to you as well, because had you not done that, we would not be where we are tonight, because the voters would have never had a chance to even say if they supported us or not. So it's important for us, for me, to recognize you and that very difficult decision that you had to make. It would have been easier to put pause on it, but you understood the condition that our facilities are in. You understood where we would be potentially if the operational referendum did not pass, or we didn't get a chance to put it in front of our voters, and what that potential would look like as far as coming up in the future for potential budget cuts. And again, that was a lot of faith and trust and courage. It would have been so much easier just to say pause, but you had the courage to go forward on that. So I thank you for that. And again, as Dr. Herzog previously mentioned, a lot of people behind the scenes working on this. This was a team effort. And that includes, again, so many of our teachers, paraprofessionals, custodial, clerical, and so many others that I'm not even mentioning. Our principals, so many times to provide direction and make sure that staff members had answers to questions that they may have had. and to facilitate conversations so that people became informed, and they were informed voters, because that's what we were looking for. We wanted people to make an informed decision. We also wanted to make sure, and to my executive team, the executive team worked tirelessly at this. We all had different roles and responsibilities. Some roles were a little bit more visible than others, but I need to make sure that people understand it was everyone. And again, to our community, thank you so much, from the deepest of our hearts. Thank you for your commitment to our students. Thank you to your commitment to our community as a whole, our schools, and our future. So with that being said, we'll transition us into the last slide here. And on the screen, you'll see just a few examples of where I've been spending my time lately. We did meet just a week ago, so that's why there's not 2 rows typically, as you would see. And some of the things today, very fortunate that we were able to, even as recent as today, to just be able to provide some of those personal thank yous to some of the organizations that gave us opportunities to provide information, so that, again, everyone could be informed as they were making their decisions. So with that, at this point in time, I'm going to ask for Mr. Kamer to come forward to provide for us a COVID-19 update.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So as you know, each week I review the Winnebago County Data Summary. The data summary comes out every Thursday, and it includes data from the previous 2-week period. So the report I'm going to be referencing this evening covers the 2-week period that goes from, sorry, I thought I had the date written down, October 14th through October 27th. So the next report is due to come out tomorrow, and will cover the subsequent 2-week period. So one of the key data points that we review each week is the case rate. And the case rate looks at the number of active cases in an area, and it's based on a population size of 100,000. So the case rate is calculated for not only the county, but also looks at the case rate for the state and the geographical boundary of our school district. So if you recall, a case rate that's 100 or above is considered high, and any case rate that's 350 or above is considered to be in the very high range. And for the past several weeks now, going back to September, we've been in the very high range in terms of our case rate. If we're looking for a glimmer of light, that has been trending downward ever so slightly each week. And it did again this week. Our case rate for our district boundary was 999.9. So again, that's a little bit of a decrease from last week. The report also breaks down the case rate and gives the corresponding burden status for different age groups. So for instance, for the age group of 5 through 9, the burden status was considered high. 10 through 14, it was considered very high. And 15 through 17, it was considered very high as well. Now, this past week, for the first time, the health department was able to break that down for us even a little bit more and indicate which students within those age groups actually attend OASD schools, which gives us a more clear picture of the actual impact on our schools. So it did reduce the total case rate for each age group to the point where each of the age groups had a burden status that was considered high. So it didn't change the burden status for the 5 through 9 group, but it did for the 10 through 14 and the 15 through 17 group. It brought both of those groups down in category. So going forward, as we look at our instructional matrix that we've been using to make decisions on the changing models and for these weekly board reports, we're going to refer to that district burden status for those age groups versus what's included in the report, like I said, because it is a more accurate reflection. One of the other data points that we've been referencing on a regular basis is the New York Times. They come out with a weekly overview of the highest case rates for metro areas across the nation, and for quite some time, the Oshkosh-Neenah area was at or near the top of the list. So this week, for the first time, another glimmer of light is that we weren't included on the list. We weren't in the top 20. But with that being said, the health department is still urging caution because our case rate does continue to remain extremely high. And the new cases that we're seeing still exceed testing and investigation capacity of the health department. So from a testing standpoint, the district has been taking steps on our own to make sure that our employees are able to access testing and we're able to get the results in a more timely manner. So we're actually working with both UW-Oshkosh and CISA 6 on 2 separate testing programs. The UW-Oshkosh program is especially exciting, and what they're doing, they're working with the federal government to supply antigen tests for district staff members. And these are the same antigen tests that University of Oshkosh students use. And it's more of a screener than anything else. So for the antigen tests, they're a little bit less intrusive, and the results come back within about 15 minutes. So at a maximum 45 minutes later, staff members would have an indication of whether or not they're positive or negative. Now, the reliability of the antigen tests are a little bit lower. So if we have an individual who tests positive on the antigen tests, or if we have a staff member who may be symptomatic and goes to get tested, in addition to that antigen test, they'd follow that up with a PCR test. And then those are the tests where they use the swab up the nose. They're a little bit more reliable, but the results take a little bit longer to come back because they have to go to the laboratory. So those results would come back 2 to 3 days after the sample is taken. So still, the fact that we can access this program for free is a huge benefit to the district. So we're still working out some of the final details, and staff will be receiving more information in the near future, but we're looking to start that up on Monday. The other testing program is through CISA 6, and it's also a great program. That the results for the PCR test that they do for staff come back extremely quick. Usually the next day, staff could get results back. However, we are going to hold off on utilizing that program in most instances for the time being, just because of the availability of the UW-Oshkosh program. It's not saying that we won't use the CISA 6 program as time goes along, but I think for very select cases right now, that may be something that we use. For instance, if we have a staff member who is symptomatic, or as a household contact who is symptomatic, if we were to get the test results back quickly, we may be able to return that staff member to the classroom right away. And in those instances, it may be a benefit to use the CISA program instead. However, there is a cost to the district for the CISA 6 program, which is about $100 per test. So something to keep in mind. But the fact that we do have these 2 options now available for our district staff members is a huge, huge deal for us. Along with that, we updated the instructional model matrix this week based on the data that we received from the Winnebago County Health Department and from this new information that we have related to testing, and from some of the steps that we've been taking with contact tracing as a district. So based on the updates that we made to the instructional model matrix, we are at a point where we would be returning to Model 3 hybrid. And that's going to be taking place for all students in grades pre-K through 12 on November 12th. And with that, we're going to continue to monitor data on a regular basis like we have been doing in order to continue to make the best decisions possible for our students and our families. And then finally, just as a reminder, we do have the COVID-19 dashboard on our district website that looks at active positive cases and quarantines for students and staff members in the district, breaks it down by school, and it also looks at the cumulative totals of positive cases and quarantines that we've had since the start of the school year. And that's updated every Monday and Thursday. The most recent update came this past Monday, November 2nd. And just to give you an idea, the cumulative total of positive cases that we've had in the district so far this year has been 170. And the total number of quarantines that we've had as a district is 2,495.
Thank you, Mr. Kamer. I'm going to supplement some of the information if all possible, just so that the board is fully aware of many of the components that we're, and the variables that we're taking a look at when making types of decisions related to any type of transition between our models. As you may recall, at the beginning of the year, while we were making these decisions, we advised the board that it is specifically designed to be fluid, to be able to go into a particular model and to be able to get out of a particular model and go to a different model. That was very intentional because we knew that we would have to monitor our data closely. I know that there's a lot of concern out there from a variety of different individuals that are stating, the amount of cases are really high. They're higher than where we were when we made the decision in order to go into Model 4 virtual learning. And so I think it's very important to remind everyone as to what the rationales were in order to go into Model 4. The rationales on that was that we were having significant increases day over day. Day over day. In addition to that, we were at a point to where we could no longer appropriately staff our schools. And what do I mean by appropriately staff? That means that where you want to make sure that there is an adult in front of a child, whether a substitute teacher, whether it be a paraprofessional, whether it be the teacher, or in many cases we also had administrators that were going into classrooms. So that the children who were there had the proper supervision. We were trying not to collapse classrooms because the whole purpose of hybrid is to separate. In addition to that, the Winnebago County Health Department was urging us to go into a virtual mode as well, and had made that recommendation. And as we have done all along and continue to do, we followed that recommendation. From there, during that time period, yes, unfortunately, we were on national news. We were in New York Times top 20 list, and it was a very scary situation all combined together. We're at a point now where we're different. We're at a point where now, while the cases are high, we're not having the hand-over-hand increases occurring on a daily basis. We've leveled off. There's going to be slight fluctuations in between. Our community, we had expressed to our community that once we see a 2-week starting of a decline, that this would be something that we would re-examine. So it was not only that, but it was also our ability to ensure that we can appropriately staff our schools. To that end, last week you heard me speak about what we are doing in order to increase the capacity of our substitute pool. We continue to look for ways in which to give some peace of mind to our staff as well. So for example, the UWO program, we are going to be encouraging our staff to be tested on a weekly basis. By the way, it's not just for staff members, it's also for their spouses and their children. So if there is a fear that maybe I'm not, I'm asymptomatic and I'm exposing my family at home to this now gives them that opportunity to go get tested, find out. We want you to. And so that way we can help you to work with that fear, that real emotion of fear, and to be able to go forward on that. This is a 6-week opportunity, so obviously it's going to go even after Thanksgiving. The decision to go into hybrid is in full support of the Winnebago County Health Department. In fact, they even said, at this point in time, it's actually safer for our students to be in school
than it is for them to be in the community. Because inside of our schools, we follow our safety protocols. And we're able to keep as much social distancing as possible. We know there are those situations where that may not always occur. So, for example, class changes. But inside the classes, we're able to do that for the most part. And we're also able to do this with the masking. This is our number one defense, as we've always been talking about. And then we are able to provide for them hand sanitizers if needed. Of course, they can always wash their hands as well within restrooms and such. So it's those things that were taken into consideration. The other thing that has to be taken into consideration, which is equally as important, is weighing the risks associated with COVID-19. And as we know, unfortunately, some of these are unknown risks. With some of the unknown risks that are existing right now, mental health being one of those components. We know that there is a need for mental health. We can see this evidenced by our sheriff and our chief of police saying that there's an increase in drug use right now. And that drug use is not going to be limited to non-parents, non-staff. It's across the board. And that goes often, not always, but sometimes it does go hand in hand with mental health. But we've heard on television, we've heard from other experts talking specifically about mental health needs of students and staff members because of the social isolation. We also know about well-being of children. Our staff members are our frontline individuals who oftentimes can recognize if a child may need some assistance with mental health issues, or there may be maybe something going on with food supply at the house, because food scarcity in the Oshkosh community is a reality for our community. Yes, we are providing the food in our grab and go program right now as we are in virtual. The food pantry is providing a lot of food, but that is dependent upon parents and families being able to get to those sites to obtain the food. When we're in a hybrid mode, we have easier access in order to ensure that we're able to provide those meals to those families, to our students, right, who have a need for that, and to identify maybe some of those families who are struggling, in order to figure out how can we get them the services that they may need in order to subsidize that need for them when it comes to nutrition. So we're constantly balancing these variables. And I say again, and I think this is extremely important, we would not be going in this direction if we did not have the support of the health department. We do know that there are going to be instances as we go forward where we will have to put a classroom into a virtual mode. We may have to do a school level into a virtual mode. We may have to put a school in virtual mode. It is going to be dependent upon the data that comes that's specific to our sites. And that's very important because we're not going to take risks, unnecessary risks. Instead, we're going to have those conversations with the health department. We're going to use the data that's in front of us, and we're going to make data-informed and conversation-informed decisions. The matrix, yes, it changed. And if you'll recall, at the bottom of the chart that was on that matrix, we have said all along that the criteria may change as new data becomes available. In this case, new data became available to us. Our principal stated, instead of using the age groups that you have, can you do it by school level so you really can break it apart for us? So that way we really monitor it closer. That is exactly what we have done. And we will continue to do that as we go forward on this. And again, it's to help inform decisions, not make the decisions. And I think that's really important. One other thing that we found where there was a lot of confusion was when it said the targeted standards or benchmarks, there was a lack of understanding that in those, that is what's needed for us to return to Model 1. Not Model 3, but Model 1. That's full-on like it was pre-pandemic times. And that's a very important variable or distinction for people to have an understanding of. A lot of the things that you heard me talk about last week was the work that was occurring behind the scenes in order for us to prepare, so the moment that the data supported it, we would be able to do a transition for the district. We have been planning for this for well over a week, closer to 2 weeks to be candid with you. We started doing this when we started working with asking our paraprofessionals, if you have an associate's degree or higher, and you would like to become a substitute teacher, will you let us know? So that way we could increase the capacity of our substitute teacher pool. We, in addition to that, with Mr. Kamer and myself, we were already working behind the scenes in order to ensure that each school site had at least one additional person that was trained with the contact tracing. Now, it's not the exact same type of contact tracing because our health officials are still going to do that. In other words, our nurses and our health room assistants. But all they're going to do at this point in time is say, okay, yep, this one needs to have contacts. From there, these individuals that are trained now are the ones who are doing all the phone calls and everything else, which was previously taking away the time that was needed by our nurses in order to serve our students and some of our most neediest students for medical complexities. So those, in combination of all of those things, that is why once we had the data on Thursday last week, and then it was supplemented with even additional data. And by the way, for all the students that were being included in the Oshkosh School District boundaries, only 50% belong to the Oshkosh Area School District. I want to
You
say
mean
that
the positive
again.
cases?
Of the COVID positive cases
Mhm.
within that 2-week window, only 50% belong to our district. The remaining belong to private schools, homeschool, and open enrollment, or students that had previously graduated or weren't of age to come to school just yet. So I think that's significant for people to hear. Because previous to that, we had been making decisions based off those age ranges, not realizing that a lot of them aren't our children. And even within the 50%, there was a little bit over a quarter of those students that were not even attending school in person. They are our E-Academy students. So that's an important distinction to make. There were several schools that didn't even have a single active positive COVID student in their facility. So we're able to drill down at this point in time all the way to that level so that we can appropriately monitor, so that we can look at it from a more objective basis in order to determine, okay, the classroom needs to close. Grade level at that school needs to close. That school needs to close. And close is not the right word. I should say transition into virtual learning, because they're not closing, because learning continues to happen. It's just in a different environment. So these are some of the things that we're looking at. In addition, the health department asked us, they said, would you consider, please, the week after Thanksgiving break and the week after winter break to please go into virtual mode for that week, those 2 weeks. And the rationale behind that is this. What they explained to me was that children who come in contact, or students, youths, that come into contact to somebody who is COVID positive, if they're going to become symptomatic, typically become symptomatic within 5 days. Hence, the 5 days of that week, as you might say. And it's actually longer than a week because you have the 5 school days, but you also have the weekends. So that's the rationale provided for that. And yet again, the recommendation by the health department and what we are following and implementing. The Neenah School District is also doing a very similar approach based off that same recommendation. Related to some of our school districts around us, I think it's important to note that we have to make decisions based upon our current community environment and what's happening within our community. Right now, unfortunately, Fond du Lac, they are now on the New York Times list, whereas we are not. So that's something to really kind of take into consideration. And when I'm talking about the New York Times list, I want to be very specific. What list am I talking about? What I'm talking about is the list where they say where the outbreak is worse now. We used to be on that list. We're not there. And the list that says where there may be bad news ahead. Fortunately, they're not on that list, but they are on the other one. And we used to be on that one too, but we are no longer on that list. We are on one list, and I would project that in the near future we'll probably fall off of this, but it's the places hit hardest. And out of the 20 rankings, we're number 20. And so this is a cumulative data, by the way. It's not your current situation. And that is an important distinction as well. So for Fond du Lac, we completely understand because we were there. We were there in September. And their ability to staff their schools. Those are the type of decisions that go into, and that is why you will see communities taking different actions based upon what is localized for them within their region. As we proceed forward, there are going to be situations where there may be things occurring even within our community. It may not necessarily be due to spread. It may be due to their ability to staff their schools. So those are things to take into consideration. Just as with us, if we have a particular school we're having difficulties with, for whatever reason, that is the logic that is being utilized in order, and the rationale on how we're making those types of decisions. It is very objective. It helps us to remove the emotion, the very real emotion of fear from the equation, and take a look at how to proceed forward. And again, so grateful to UWO to include us in this program. So again, we're trying to give a resource to our staff to help them remove that element of fear. If they're suspecting, I may have it. And the beautiful thing of that is, let's say they go on Monday, they get tested, and then for whatever reason, they're like, oh, I'm not really sure, I don't feel good, it's Thursday, they can go back that same week. Because now they may have symptoms and they want to double check. So those are some of the tools and resources that we're giving to our staff to help them feel more confident about coming back to work and having a safe environment, and to address that the reality of fear for many of them. One of the things that's happening right now, I know locally, one of our private schools is converting over into virtual learning. They're doing that after Thanksgiving break. And then for the elementary students, immediately following winter break, they're coming right back. Not even a week after, they're coming right back. And it's the high schoolers that they'll be coming back after the conclusion of the first semester. And high schoolers have easier access to their technology and those kind of things, so they're able to do in the virtual environment final exams, those type of situations. So again, it's going to be unique. Every district has unique elements that they're dealing with, and working for us, again, I cannot express how grateful I am for the partnership that we have with the health department in order to help us make those informed decisions. And we will not make a decision that is against the advisement of where they believe that we should be, because that is a risk that we're not willing to take. So, Mr. Kamer, anything else that I may need to add?
Not that I can think of, no.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
I'm sorry.
UWO is also providing 2-hour result testing for their students and faculty. Is that something that we're looking at in the future too? Because that is the best case scenario, to know in just 2 hours. Okay.
Unfortunately, that's not. So this program we're talking about right now with the antigen test, they'll have their results within 45 minutes to their phone.
That's amazing.
So that's a
Okay.
6-week program.
Okay.
And once we transition out of that program and into the CISA 6 program, they would have the results the next day.
Okay. Can you just explain what the antigen testing is and how that's different from COVID-19 testing?
So there's 2 types of tests, and I'll let Mr. Kamer highlight that.
Yeah, and I'm by no means an expert, of course, but the method for collecting the sample is a little bit different. Whereas I think with the antigen tests, it either uses a little bit of saliva or it's not quite as intrusive in terms of the swab that would go all the way up the nose for the collection. And they do look at different things. I think with the antigen testing, it's looking at any potential active virus within the sample immediately. So the reason why that can sometimes be unreliable, from what I understand, is that if it's done too early before symptom onset or too late, it could potentially give a false negative.
Okay.
But that's why, if somebody is symptomatic, they would follow up with the PCR test, which has a bit more reliability.
Okay, thank you.
So just to expand on that, Ms. Carlin, they will go first with an antigen test. If they're non-symptomatic and the result is no, the result is no. If it's a positive, then that is when they will go to that next level of testing. If someone is symptomatic, regardless if they have a positive or negative on the first test, the antigen test, they will be sent to the second test.
Gotcha.
And also what's really important, again, through this program with UWO, this is on demand. Our employees don't have to come through us for any type of prior approval. They just, we're working, we'll have more details in the near future as to how this is going to work, and we'll share that out with our employees. But it's usually like, theoretically here, you sign up for a time slot, you go during that time slot, and you'll be able to get access to that testing. So that's what we're looking at doing, and again, it's for the entire family.
Yep.
And this is something that is being made available to the Oshkosh Area School District and first responders within our community. So this is something that's going to be for us, and this opportunity, we're very grateful for that opportunity for the 6 weeks. And for once we get beyond that and we go into the CISA 6 program, that's the one where it has to have pre-authorization from their supervisor, usually their principal, prior to going to CISA 6 in order to be tested. For those extreme situations where we may have unique positions, for example, a nurse. In other words, we need the nurse at school because we don't have substitutes for nurses. Then in those extreme circumstances, those would be this type of situations where we would go ahead and authorize a CISA 6 so we could get the results the very next day, versus waiting 2 to 3 days to get the results.
Okay. Just to make sure I understand correctly, so you take the antigen test, and if it comes back positive, then you would take the COVID test, and that would be 2 days or
Well,
3 days?
they're both COVID tests.
They're both COVID tests?
Correct.
Okay.
There's an antigen and the
PCR.
PCR
Okay.
test.
Okay.
They're different. So the antigen is like it's a
Screener.
screener on steroids, okay?
Got it, okay. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And this program has started this week, or when is the official start?
Monday. Next week.
Okay.
Monday next week. So again, if
Oh,
anybody
good
is
timing.
nervous about prior to school starting and wants to go get tested prior to school starting, they're absolutely, again, we are really encouraging our staff to participate in this program. Again, this will really help. It may help us catch something that we don't see, in the early, or it may be someone who's asymptomatic. And it'll help us to be able to catch that. The thing that's also important to consider, and I can't emphasize this enough, is that all the safety protocols that we're implementing within our schools, we need individuals to implement when they leave our schools. And that it's the social gatherings, the potential, I need to go to highly populated areas. We go somewhere, but we're not wearing a mask. Those kind of things. These are highly dangerous behaviors, and that is that is community spread, and that's what can impact our schools, because it may be an adult or a child that engages in that type of behavior and comes into the school. And then we have to look at the unique situations related to that. That is what drove a lot of what happened to us previously. And so I can't emphasize this enough with our community, our parents, our staff. Please, all the safety things, elements, everything that we're being told works. We just need people to practice it 24 hours a day in order to help us be able to keep our schools open. Any other questions?
I just have a comment. I do represent this board on the CISA 6 board, and I was just in a meeting this afternoon, actually, with their director, Ted Knightsky. When we do avail ourselves of the CISA 6 testing, the way that works is you go out to the CISA 6 building out on Highway 44, out toward, Highway 44. And the results come back to Mr. Knightsky, and then he personally makes phone calls to everyone and just lets them know what the results are of their test. So it's pretty quick.
Good.
And as Dr. Cartwright pointed out last week, I guess it was last week at our last meeting, it's not a quick test, it's quick testing. So it's a very reliable test, and the results come back quickly.
Yeah, and I think overall, we're all getting better with providing faster, easier access to testing. And so, for example, CVS, I know you can go free appointment, you schedule it, you do the swab in your own car, and it's very safe, very efficient, and it's a 2-day turnaround. So for the greater good, if anyone's thinking about getting tested, I think a lot of people were nervous to get tested because it would take 5 days, and there's a lot of people that can't afford to miss 5 days of work. So I'm happy to see that it's not
Right.
taking as long. And I hope that encourages more people to test.
Right. Are there other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Kemmer and
Thanks, Matt.
Dr.
Thanks, Matt.
Cartwright, for enhancing that report.
Thank you.
And I need to know, for the leisure of the board, would you like a verbal report out on the elementary Chromebook purchase?
I think in the interest of openness and transparency, that would be a good idea.
Dr. Gunlock?
Dr. Gunlock, thank you for your tireless efforts over these many weeks.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Appreciate that.
It's my pleasure.
Dr. Dave.
Great job.
Especially after last night, it was my pleasure.
Right?
The written report you have before you is going to come back again in 2 weeks with a resolution. This is the Chromebook purchase for students in grades K through 5. This is the second round. If you remember our 2014 referendum for learning that we've heard so much about lately, we rolled that out in a sequence fashion where we started with staff, then high school students, middle, elementary, and we've cycled through one of those times. So we're ready to do the elementary again, but it's a little different this time. Because when we first did it, we were unsure if we would have enough resources to do all students in grades K-5, so it really was a grade 3 through 12 rollout. Now the board, about a year ago, or not quite a year, decided in order for us to be able to provide education in this pandemic, that we would add units. We purchased about 1,550 Chromebooks. We gave those to students in grades K through 2. We took those with 500 existing units, and that allowed us to cover students in the K2 range. Well, those units that you authorized purchasing, those are the same exact ones that we are going to be purchasing here, okay? So those units will be used for about 4.5 years when we're all said and done, those 1,550. The 500 are 4 years old and need to be replaced, and they are joining 2,210 grade 3 through 5 Chromebooks that are 4 years old and need to be replaced. So that is why the quantity is 2,710 Chromebooks. The good news is we are doing this early for a reason, and we also got very good pricing on these units. The vast majority of them were still under the old bid document, so we got them. As you can imagine, because no district can get Chromebooks very easily, the price has gone up. But we were able to fall in under the other limit, so that's why our bid deal is so good. We are also doing this a little bit earlier and being proactive because we believe there is a 6 to 8 month lag time between order and when they show up. I can tell you that many school districts that I talk to and work with have been trying to get Chromebooks since the pandemic started, and they're hearing best estimates around January 1st. So just to give you an idea. So that's why we're bringing this a little earlier. Normally we'd do it in the spring, but we just want to make sure that we're able to get product. And this comes out of the existing 2021 budget. So it's been budgeted. It's the last year of the 2014 referendum that would be used to fund this. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
I'm just curious, Dr. Gunlock, on your report under item C, under major points, why the one company bid on 3,000 rather than 2,710?
That's a typo. That was a typo, because I think that was pasted in from a different number, and all the rest of them were changed to 2,710.
Okay,
So that should
curious.
be changed to 2,710, and when you see it come back, you'll see that exactly. So
But the bid is correct.
the bid is correct. Yep. And we will be taking the low bidder in the amount of about $50,000 lower than the rest. So,
Any other questions or comments from board?
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Dr.
Have a
Gunlock,
great night.
again. Okay, then moving on to other board committee reports. I believe that Mr. Evans is waiting to give a report this evening.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes. I was the acting chair of the Facilities and Finance Committee meeting, which met on October 15th. The first item that we discussed was the potential switch to self-funded insurance. We had a gentleman from USI presented information on how a self-funded insurance program works. With a self-funded plan, the employer acts like the insurance company and assumes all financial risks associated with the health plan. Industry trends state that you get a high claim year approximately every 7 years, and in 7 years the district should be able to save enough funds to cover those costs if and when they would happen. One of the pros of self-funded plan is limiting the extreme fluctuations in health insurance premiums for employer-employee. And as you know, insurance every year you get an increase. There was a request to put out an RFP in November, and we thought that before that would happen, that we should have a board workshop on this so everybody can get a rundown on how this works, and I think that's tentatively scheduled for December 2nd. The second thing that we talked about is wellness plans. The theory behind a wellness plan is to generate healthy employees, which then provides fewer claims and lower costs for the district. Right now, we are on a participation-based wellness plan, where employees and spouses are rewarded for participation in testing or wellness. And what we're looking at is going to an outcome-based wellness plan where the rewards are based on actual results from those biometric testing. Probably because I was the acting chair, we didn't get through much more of the agenda than that. So we just kind of got into the Riff Road property and the potential sports complex out there, but we ran out of time, so that's coming back. And all the other things that we didn't get to on that agenda will be at the next meeting, which is coming up on Thursday, November 12th.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Are there any other board committee reports tonight? I know that Education Committee meets tomorrow, and Policy and Governance meets on Monday, correct? Okay. All right, well, thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item then, we have the non-agenda related public forum. We have several guidelines for this. First, we ask that you clearly state your name and address when your name is called and give the topic that you wish to address. If you are acting as a spokesperson for a particular group of individuals, please indicate the group that you represent. We ask that you state clearly and concisely the matters of concern, and your comments need to be limited to the time allotted, which is 3 minutes. Remember that the use of specific names of district personnel may lead to legal liability. In such instances, please pursue the district's formal complaint process by contacting the superintendent's office at 424-0160 to direct you to the correct or appropriate administrator. So with that, we will start with Isabella Mariucci.
Hello. My name is Isabella Mariucci, obviously. And what are the
It's okay. Isabella, are you a student?
Yes, I am.
Then reporting of your address is waived. Continue, please.
Okay. Hello. My name is Isabella Mariucci, and I am a student at Oshkosh West High School. I'm here today because I have some concerns about our return to Model 3. Last night, a fellow classmate and I created a petition to gauge interest against the opinion of returning to hybrid learning model. We now have over 400 signatures. I'm joined by hundreds of fellow classmates and supported by teachers as well. We have given voice to opposing this return to hybrid learning, and I'm here to tell you why. The concerns I will address are the number of COVID cases in the Winnebago County, the mortality rate of this virus, and the stress it creates on students and teachers alike. Thank you for providing a forum for discussion. The first point, and the most important one, is the number of cases in Winnebago County. In March, when schools closed for the first time, there were only 5. By September 1st, there were 1,300. 24 days later, we returned to remote learning, and that number was close to 3,000. This means our cases multiplied by just over 50% in that time. As of today, over 8,000 people are currently positive. Right now, Winnebago County is one of the worst counties in the state for COVID-19. These statistics came straight from the CDC. If we project forward, this could mean we could have over 16,000 active cases by the end of December. By the way, this number does not include asymptomatic or untested patients. The mortality rate of this virus sits at 1%. Now, I know that statistic isn't very high to some of you, but consider this. The Oshkosh Area School District has a total of 9,951 students. If every one of those students contract COVID, that means 99 deaths could occur. Staff population of 1,333 people. That could mean 13 of your staff members have died. I, like all of you, know that this virus affects people differently, and not all of us will have a hard time with it. But how many people are you willing to put into harm's way? How many students or staff members or loved ones are you willing to put at risk? Sandy Hook claimed 26 precious lives in a matter of seconds. This virus doesn't kill in seconds.
30 seconds, please.
It kills in weeks and in months and through negligence. Finally, students, teachers, and parents alike experience stress from changing models, especially around the holidays. At the beginning of school, without a coherent plan, switching models posed unique difficulties for everyone. It was stressful and created anxiety in a notable amount of everyone involved. Now that we've been virtual for over a month, we've fallen into a rhythm.
Thank you very much. Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next is Ashley Mariucci.
My name is Ashley Mariucci. I am a district employee. My address is 192 Moon Circle, and I am Isabella's mom. It is very, very hard sitting here and very disconcerting when I'm hearing take the emotion out of it. I am immune compromised myself. My daughter is immune compromised from being a preemie. But we don't have a choice. I have to work. There is no other option for our family. So I have one question. Can you look at her right now and tell me that she is going to be safe going back to school? Can anybody tell me that she will be safer in Model 3 than she is in Model 4 right now? It is about emotion because it's our lives. If I contract this, the likelihood is I will die because of my systems and my medical issues that I have. If that happens, what are you going to tell my daughter? What about my sons, my husband? Is it worth it? Even one person dying from this. Is it actually worth it?
Thank you for sharing. James Warren.
Did you have a lot left to finish, or?
I just had a paragraph, but it's okay.
Can you use some of my time?
Thank you.
James Warren, 1285 Wheatfield Way, Oshkosh.
Thank you. That really means a lot to me. So one student who responded to our petition had this to say. There are so many people that are immune compromised. Why would you start school when you could put so many people in danger? Do you really care about us, or do you just care about school? Another had this to say. I'm terrified about getting sick or getting my family sick. When I read those comments, it makes me upset to think that those are the types of questions that are being asked. Those two responses really resonated with me, and I'll tell you why. The following quote came directly from communication from the district. It is our hope that our families understand our commitment to safety and putting students first. Our petition clearly shows that a substantial number of students, teachers, and their loved ones do not feel safe in hybrid learning. School is supposed to be a safe and welcoming environment for all students and staff. Going back to school right now does not guarantee any of that. I know this is stress-inducing for everyone, and that we are in uncharted territory, but I hope that our concerns have reopened this door, and we hope that you will reconsider your decision to reopen schools at this time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Warren, for your,
Sure.
Warren, for your generosity. I'm just being consistent with past practice.
Obviously, James Warren, 1285 Wheatfield Way. Just speaking on behalf of the teachers in Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Education Association. Of course, there's a lot of feelings going into this. These are we understand these are very, very tough decisions that none of us ever thought we would have to make. But again, looking at the data, Oshkosh, of course, Oshkosh-Neenah area, we know, we were in the top of the list that none of us wanted to be at. And that's obviously where we didn't want to be. Obviously, the numbers are going down a little, but once you get to number one, the only way to go is down. So, of course, our numbers are going down. Unfortunately, it's still pretty scary to people, and it's pretty bad. And unfortunately, the community has still shown that they don't understand how to work with this virus. So that's what's scary about teachers, students, everyone going back next week. Of course, we feel like the date should get pushed back, especially if you're talking to medical experts. They're saying the rise in cases, the peak, is going to be around Thanksgiving. And I'm assuming that's why Lourdes Academy is planning on going virtual then, because they are listening to the medical experts when it comes to that. I understand it's a tough decision, but we would encourage that that decision could get pushed back. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warren.
Thank you.
Next is Alicia Hermann.
Hello, Alicia Hermann, 501 Congress Avenue. I've been jotting notes down. I'm actually glad that the public forum, the non-agenda public forum, came after your reports because I had a chance to listen to Dr. Cartwright and Mr. Kamer, and you asked some questions, and it was good. But some things that are still resonating with me, since we got the memo yesterday at 11 o'clock while I was teaching live, we've been virtual for 5 weeks. We are in a routine, we are in a flow. There's a reason why the numbers have been going down with students in the Oshkosh Area School District, because we have been virtual for 5 weeks. So I've been doing my part. I shared with the board members this morning, super spreader Halloween events happening this weekend, and I saw a lot of Oshkosh Area School District students participating in that. My own students that I'm going to be with next week in Model 3. And that concerns me because my daughter turned 12 and we stayed home and she watched Harry Potter movies. We did not go trick-or-treating. There's so many of us that are doing our part, and that's why the numbers are going down. And so now we've had a super spreader event, Halloween, and now we're going to go back to school. That'll be about 12 days after Halloween. So we're going to see a surge. Then we're going to be in Model 3, and then we're going to go back to Model 4. We're starting a new Model 3. Then we're going back to Model 3, and then we're going back to Model 4. I've had parents super stressed about that because finally in Model 4, we are in a routine. I have 17 kids on a regular basis in my live meets because they are finally third graders, getting themselves on their live meets, attending, turning in work finally, responding. I have a good relationship with parents, and things are working. And the numbers are increasing. Yes, we're not at the top 20. Yes, awesome. We are not, that's great. But we've got Thanksgiving. People are going to mingle. My family is not going anywhere for Thanksgiving. And I know people are. So 5 days for kids to show symptoms, that's great. But what about the asymptomatic children? What about the families? What about the staff members that decide to go places and then they come in contact with me or someone else and I get it, okay? So I know the mental health piece. I appreciate you responding to me. Mental health is huge. My family has a huge history of mental health. But we have got to look at the mental health of our children going back and forth in a less than 6 weeks. I'm going to have 4 contact days with an A and B schedule. So I'm going to see the kids 4 days, each group, until Thanksgiving. Then we're going to go virtual. Then I'm going to see the kids 4 days again, and then we're going to go virtual.
15 seconds.
And I'm worried that they're going to be going places for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and that's going to cause a surge in the Oshkosh Area School District. I'm also worried about the mental health of my own children who are scared to bring home COVID to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. We did not have anyone signed up for the agenda-related public forum, so we will go on to our first workshop item, which is District State Assessment Results and Accountability Report for 2019-2020 with Ms. Conrad.
Well, good evening. Julie Conrad, Director of Curriculum and Assessment. It is time for our annual district-wide data accountability report for the 1920 school year. It's going to look a little different this year, and I'll highlight how this looks different. So as you know, the Wisconsin State Assessment System, the following tests were not administered due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that's the ACT Aspire, the Forward Exam, and the Dynamic Learning Maps, which is our alternative assessment. Before we went into Safer at Home, we did administer the ACT statewide for our 11th graders, and we did get that in. But due to the waiver of the state assessments, there will not be school and district report cards for the 2019-20 school year. So there won't be the board workshop for school report cards and district report cards. So as you know from our strategic plan, we have 5 goals. And the goal that is really informing the data that we're going to talk about tonight informs goal number 1 and also goal number 5. So data sources that we are looking at come both internally, externally, and are also not the traditional ones that you think about. So as you can see up there, we have numerous student assessment data pieces besides the state assessments that we traditionally give in the spring. And then we have other data indicators that we are constantly looking at. And so those data indicators now more than ever are important as we start to take a look at what supports do we need to put into place, what instructional models do we need to be using with students, and how do we adjust instruction to make sure that we're stretching students that need that and also supporting students that need more. So let's get started with the data from last year that we do have and to say where are we with goal number 1. So up here is the ACT composite trend for the Oshkosh Area School District graduates. And so data that is now certified and released is for the class of 2019. And so that is the last line on there. And you can see we assessed more students than we have before. And our average OASD student graduate ACT composite is 19.7. I thought that was kind of interesting how it flipped 20.3, 19.7, 20. So I just thought that was interesting how that.
How do they know?
I don't know.
Yeah,
They just knew, right?
I
They
was
knew
like,
the data point.
What?
Yeah. The state ACT composite for the class of 2019 is 20.1. So from there, we usually report out on the grade 11 ACT statewide piece. And we do have that data, and we can use it internally for the class of 2021. But with that said, it is not released publicly because not all school districts were able to assess their students prior to the Safer at Home order. And so we happen to, in our testing window, be able to do that. So.
Excuse me, does that mean we tested earlier in the testing window?
Yep, we tested at the very beginning of the window.
Thank you.
Correct. So we have it, and we're using it. We just can't release it.
Secret, but you can't tell us.
Well, you'll see it when we have the OASD graduates next year. Yeah. So a next data point that we look at for goal number 1, and to ensure we want to know are our students college, career, and community ready, and that starts with our graduation rate. Certified data for the class of 2019, the 4-year graduation rate is out. And as you can see, we are up to 91.8% as compared to the class of 2018. And then if you look, we have our 5-year graduation rate and our 7-year graduation rate. And so going forward, when we look at accountability, we are going to be held accountable for the 4-year rate and the 7-year rate when we look at updated school and district report cards that are coming out next year. Another question is how long does it take our students compared to the state? And you can see where we are, and we continue the trend of being above the state average for the percentage of graduates in 4 years. So then we're often asked, how do we compare it to other districts that are similar in size? And so this is the same data set that we've used in previous years. And so looking at school districts that are in the range in size that are a little bit larger than us and then a little bit smaller than us. And so you can see where we land as the Oshkosh Area School District, the statewide average, and our sister districts that are similar in size when it comes to our graduation rate. Then we're often asked, how are we doing when compared to our athletic conference? Because those are the students that we see in extracurricular competitions. And you can see where we are within our athletic conference. Right. A next data point that we take a look at when we are when we are saying are students college, career, and community ready, is we look at initial post-secondary enrollment trends. And one area that we have been working on over the past several years is increasing the number of students that are enrolling in further education after graduation, because we're saying we want to make sure that students are either enrolled, enlisted, or employed. They have a plan, and that goes back to academic and career planning. So you can see for the class of 2019 how we are doing with enrollments in 4-year, 2-year, and then overall post-secondary enrollment. And so we are actually on a positive trend with that number. So next up, when we start looking at how our students are achieving, is we take a look at how many third graders are proficient at reading. And so third grade reading proficiency, or where a third grader is reading, is an indicator of will they graduate on time, will they struggle when it comes to academics in the next grades. Well, as you know, we did not have our statewide assessments. So then how do we know how students are doing comparatively? So what we have up here is we are using our iReady diagnostic data to inform us right now. So last year, and also notice that when we're talking about students and cohorts of students, we usually name them based on their graduating class. And so last year, the class of 2029, when they were third graders, their fall 2019, that means when they started third grade, okay, 39% were on grade level. When we got to the winter diagnostic, this is great movement, we had 57% were on grade level, and then we would predict where would they go from there. But what happened was COVID, safer at home, and we did not have a spring diagnostic. So now we're looking at the class of 2030. They would have been second graders last year. These are our third graders this fall. And you can see we are at 35% of them are on grade level, somewhere in the third grade range, starting with the fall and improving. And so we expect, just so you know, like when you're looking at a diagnostic, we expect that number to be lower when we start the school year, because students are learning. It's that third grade level expectation. And so we compare where were they in the fall to how they are doing in the spring. And so this year we should see that full range of data from the fall to the spring. But I want you to note, if we look at our third graders from last fall and then we look at our third graders from this fall, what do you notice about the percentage? It's not that far off, right? It's not that far off. Because another thing that we've been looking at is we've been trying to figure out, did we have a COVID slide? So a lot of times we talk about summer slide when students come back from in the fall and making adjustments due to summer slide. But now we're saying, okay, we had our safer at home time, and we know that wasn't great. It didn't go well for some students. It was a challenge. We never expected that. And then we had summer. We had students engaged in summer school, other learning opportunities, and now we're coming into the fall. What happened? Did our students have a slide? And so when you're looking at this data, on the top graph and this is for students in K through 8. Students in K through 8. This is updated from what's in your board packet because I pulled this data like after the very last day any test could be. So 5,221 students were assessed. And so taking a look at this, you have 20% plus 16%, so 36% of students are at or above grade level coming into this fall. 29% are just a little below, and then we have 34% that are 2 or more grade levels below currently at the fall. And remember, we expect that data to be lower because they haven't had their learning for this year yet. So that's for the fall of 2020. Let's roll back in time and let's go to the fall of 2019. When you take a look at the fall of 2019, you have 19%, 20%, so 39% of students were at or above grade level, 26% were in the yellow, and then you have 35% were, correct? 35% were 1 or 2 or more grade levels below. So when you take a look at those numbers, and this is for reading, the question is was there slide? And so the answer is, it doesn't look like there was slide when it comes to reading. So, go ahead, Kelly.
I'm just curious why we have such an enormous difference between 2019 with 5,221 students versus 4,000. Why is there like a 1,200 student difference?
Right, because we expanded diagnostic assessments down to K1,
right.
2.
Thank
correct.
you. I was
And
like,
so,
we did not pick up 1,200 students.
No, no.
Where, what?
So,
Okay.
so
Thank
prior,
you. That's
so
right.
prior
Yeah.
to that,
Okay.
we were assessing we had data for students in grades 3 through 8.
Right,
And so
yeah.
this is K through 8.
Yes, I remember. I do.
Correct.
Now I do. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, so that's the data set. So taking a look at this, we're sharing this with the board, but what we have done is we've gone and we're looking at this at a school level, at a grade level, at a classroom level, at the child's level, at the student level, and taking a look. What does that student need? What does that classroom need? What are the next steps with instruction with that data? So this is reading. So the next piece is when we take a look at math, how many students are proficient in math by 8th grade? And so 8th grade tends to be, 8th grade math is another indicator towards graduation success. So if you take a look at this, 8th graders at or above grade level in math on the iReady. So this is the class of 2023. So they were 8th graders last year. So in the fall, 26% were at grade level. And then we got to the winter, it was 34%. And then, of course, we couldn't do the spring. And then if you take a look at where we are for 8th graders this fall, we're at 25%. So it looks like we're right where we were before. I'm going to make a note on this. The iReady cut scores for math are pretty rigorous. And so when we when we've done data comparisons, when we compare our iReady math data with how it comes out on how that predicts statewide assessment scores for students, students usually score higher on the state assessment than they do on iReady, if that makes sense. So then we take a look here. And so for this fall, these are all students. And so for math, we assessed 4,000 students, and you may be going, where's the rest of the students? Because we, at K1, 2, Dreambox is a math supplemental program that does an assessment that's directly aligned with our Bridges curriculum. So we didn't have K1, 2 do the fall piece. We'll have them do winter. We'll have them do winter and spring, but we wanted to get them started in Dreambox. So if you take a look at this, we have 9%, 16% in the green. So that's 25%, 42% in yellow, and then we have 34% in the red. If you go to fall 2019, and you take a look at this, and now I'm going to have to do my math off the top of my head. You have 42% in the green, 36%, and then 23% in the red. And so if you take a look at this, the answer would be, what would the answer be about slide when it comes to math? There was definitely slide in math, right? And so we've been working through, why is that? What does that look like? What was missing? What did, what happened? We did cover, in middle school and in elementary school, we covered all of the standards for math at a particular grade level. The thing about math is you know that it's logical sequential. You have to cover topics, and you need to cover topics in certain orders. So we may have taught things, but depending on the level of what we're finding is depending on the level of engagement in the student with learning this past spring, or if they went to summer school with us to stay caught up, that has made a big difference. And we did some digging a little bit deeper with some of our elementary schools, and we found that students that did attend virtual summer school with us did not slide when it came to math. So engagement is key. Keep that in mind for our next data pieces. So that is with math, and just like reading, we go and we take a look at it by school, by grade level, by classroom, looking deeper in that all the way down to the student level. So the next piece is we take a look at what are our demographics, because our demographics tell us a story about our school district. And if you remember last year when we were talking about demographics and we were talking about data, we've had a demographic shift, over the past 2 decades, especially in the percent of students qualifying for free and reduced lunch. And so up here we have a comparison between the 2018-19 school year and the 2019-20 school year. And you can notice a few shifts, an increase in students with disabilities. We're about the same with the percentage of economically disadvantaged students. But please note the shift in our students of color. We've definitely had an increase in the number of students that identify as a race other than white. Mm-hmm. So our Academy demographics, when we started to take a look at that from our third Friday count, we took a look at what do our demographics in this program look like with the rest of the district, because we want proportional representation, or we should have that. And so we took a look at that, and this is where the data landed for students at that point in time that were enrolled in E-Academy, because that was a question that was asked of us.
Julie, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
How much did the E-Academy go up as a result of the pandemic? Like, how many people?
So that is a great question. So we had approximately 375 high school part-time enrollments. So in other words, a high school student either took 1 or 2 classes within E-Academy, and we've been doing that for many years. We had 7 full-time virtual students at the high school last year. So this fall, we went from 7 virtual high school students to the 1,069 as of the third Friday count in September. Virtual students, right? And in our strategic plan, we have that mapped out that we were going to increase the enrollment and start to roll in this E-Academy option because our families were asking for that. Students were asking for those online 100% virtual opportunities. So the pandemic moved that timeline up quite a bit.
From years to months?
Yeah. No. From years to weeks.
Thank you.
So last year it was 300 students.
Last year it was
Part-time.
seven full-time students to 1,069 full-time students.
Wow, okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
Excuse me, so on the left-hand side of the screen, are those all full-time? I'm
Yes,
sorry, I
those are
didn't hear
all
that,
full.
sorry.
Those are all full. Those are
that
all
says
full-time
full-time.
students.
I know, I did a remedial reading class, sorry.
That's okay. We are happy to support.
I know I can get help. Thank
Yes. Yep. So full-time students. So we had a big challenge to ramp up that fast into that virtual learning environment. But I can tell you that we're in a routine. We're at a cruising altitude. Our teachers, our staff are doing fabulous. Our kids and our families, they've gotten into the groove. And for families, it's a good choice, especially if you don't want to flow back and forth between the models. And thus, once again, another plug, the transition, we're going to have an enrollment period from November to December, like that was in Dr. Cartwright's Superintendent's Good News Report, and that's out there that you can enroll or unenroll in E-Academy for second semester. So if you're interested, check that out.
Did you have a question, Mr. President?
I had one question. How many, so is that our total number enrolled right now?
Our total number enrolled, like right now, as of yesterday morning, was 977.
Okay, and so that change is due to accommodations that the district provided?
That change was due to working with families to make sure that they had an appropriate placement. Yes.
All right, thank you.
So another piece is that we often, when we look at data, we usually look at data from the lens of gaps or minding the gap, and that's students subgroups. So often subgroups, when we look at students, they overlap, And so this is updated information from the 2019-20 school year, because this is interested how a student's identities and a student's labels, I'm not a big fan of labels, but this is how they often intersect. So students with disabilities, 53% of students with disabilities are economically disadvantaged. English language learners, 74% of our English learners are economically disadvantaged. And with race and ethnicity, 30% of white students are economically disadvantaged, 66% of non-white students or students of color are economically disadvantaged. And so this graphic is up here to talk through, this is the importance of our equity work. We need to be looking at this. We need to be cognizant of this as we start to put supports in place, design learning, and thinking about what instruction looks like for our students to make sure that they have access, that they universally, our curriculum is accessible from a teaching and learning lens, but also our support services. And then the last piece of data that I know many have been interested in, because this has been often asked, well, you're in virtual learning, so are kids even participating? Because I don't even know if they're, like, the question is are they really even going, are you holding school? Yep, we actually are in school. We're in Model 4. And so up here is the data by secondary school, and this happened to be pulling, and we did secondary schools because Canvas is for all students 6 through 12. Remember, we have 3 elementary schools. That data is harder to pull out of Google Classroom universally, but Canvas, we can get those analytics and metrics. So if you take a look at this, the blue column is our percent participation rate as of October 28th. Okay, and if you can take a look at that, so our overall login rate is at 96%. And then you can go back into Safer at Home. So we have April, we were at 91.83%, and then at the end of May, right before we did final report cards, finals, etc., at the high school, we were at a 92.6% login rate. So if you take a look at that, we are doing much better with login rate. But notice up there I put a disclaimer. And I said, no, login rate is not an indicator of the level or the quality of engagement of a student. But login rate is important because if we can get a student to get logged in, that is their first step, engaging with their teacher and engaging with content and engaging with the learning. And so that's the first step. But we say it, and I caution about the indicator of level of engagement, because also attendance rate. It's the first step when you think about attendance in a school, but it's not an indicator of the level or the quality of engagement, because you can have children that come to school every single day, right, but are disengaged, right? So I want us to just think about it's a place to start. Go ahead.
Can it also kind of the opposite of what you're saying? If a student is doing well in the class and they've got a great grade and they think I don't have to go to class, I don't have to get on the Zoom call, and then they're like, but I've heard a few of my the hearings out there that have tapped in that said that, and how do you argue that with your kids sometimes, you have to be engaged, you have to go, but they're getting good grades. So I think it's both sides. It's not just the kids that don't want to get on, but it's the kids that are doing well that don't. So I think that number can go both ways on both sides too.
Exactly. And then also think about it, that it's also easier to engage when it's a subject area or a course that you're really into, that's something that that drives your passions. And so you may have a student who's logging in every single day to go to their art class, or to be with music, or maybe their English course is just, it's their thing. But math, it's a struggle, and so that's the one you put off, or you don't log into, or whatever. And sometimes it's just a lot easier to avoid when you're doing that. The other thing, but we do need to monitor login rate, because that's going to be some of the first indicators for students, like if they're struggling. So let's just say you are struggling with mental health, or you're struggling with some depression, or you're just flat out struggling. And who in this pandemic hasn't struggled at one time or another, right? And saying, okay, how am I going to get through today? our students are experiencing that. Our staff are experiencing that, right? And so when we track that and you have a student where you're going, oh, wait a minute, you haven't logged in. And so right now, our pupil services staff, our teachers are like, as soon as we notice something's going on, we're reaching out and saying, how are you? I miss you. Where have you been? Come to class. We'll do that. On October 14th, early release, our staff really engaged in strategies, like they had professional development and collaboration around how do you engage students in a virtual environment? How do you bring them back in? Once they disengage, how do you invite them back in with no blame, no shame, no judgment? Because right now, it's hard, right? It's hard. And so, so with that, there's a lot of different things. The other thing is data that we traditionally look at looks different in a virtual environment, and how we look at it, how we track it. All these discussions are going on right now, but this is a place to start.
I think we could have, when we're in person, we don't know if they're engaged either. Like they can be going to school in person and not engaged. So engagement is a really hard thing to measure, right?
Right.
But it is encouraging to see that so many, that people are checking in at such a high rate. I had a question for you though.
Sure.
You went over the third grade readers' proficiency numbers, and we're doing really well, 35%. And do you think that's accurate? I mean, because you said you were surprised too. I mean, obviously it's accurate. That's not what I mean, but why do you think that's happening? That it's just.
I mean, that's what we're digging into. We're seeing, okay, was it students engaged in summer school? Was it the strategies that we used during the safer at home or at home learning in the spring that maintained that? Was it, I believe our families believe reading and literacy it's important, right? And so were families engaged in reading. Here, this is one of my wonderings, is that when we're in a virtual environment, you do more reading than you ever have before, right? Because you're digesting text, you're comprehending text in all different ways. So I wonder, this might be a great dissertation project, right? I'm wondering if that has. That's something I wonder is, does that have something to do with also what we're currently seeing with the lack of slide?
Yeah. Well, the question I was terribly trying to ask was like, if you think that that's really accurate, and it sounds like it is.
Well, one data point is one data point.
Right.
So another thing that our teachers are doing is we also, for students that are scoring below grade level currently, they're doing the developmental reading assessment. They're taking a closer look at that. They're looking at their classroom phonics assessments. They're looking at those different things to say, does this make sense for this particular student? Because remember, your teachers are meeting with their students in whole group, but they're also meeting with them one-on-one in small groups as well.
I'm really encouraged by math too, because that one, Proficiency Math, 8th grade, that was one area that I thought, how do you do math virtually? And it's looking like we're doing a good job.
Yep, we're doing our best.
Are there other questions or comments? I'm sorry, Mrs. Szilagyi.
Yes, I do, and they kind of follow up on that with the data sources, and you hit them. I think when people look at the list on page 4, it can feel very overwhelming. So I just wanted to hit on, you said if students are at grade level at the iReady reading assessment, do they then also complete the DRA and the PALS, or?
Well, they're for grades K through 2. We're required to do PALS, because our PALS is our early reading literacy screener, and we're required in the state of Wisconsin to do that. Okay. So they have to do that screener. For students in grades 3, 4, 5, we won't do the developmental reading assessment with them if they are on grade level.
Okay. So at the kindergarten level, there are 2 state mandated tests, basically.
Correct.
There's school kindergarten through second.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, there's just one, because the state mandated test doesn't kick in
Is
until third
PALS,
grade.
correct. And then
So-
forward exam in third
In
grade.
third grade, yes, so
Mhm.
there's always one at the
There's
state level.
always one. Yep.
Thank you, I knew that, I'm just looking at the
Mhm.
list, and I made a lot of circles and underlined all the Ks, and
Yep.
trying to see how many there really were at each grade level, because it can feel overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to clarify that not all students will take all of those, that there's
Correct.
that layer of kind of, I don't know if scaffolding's the right word, but saying, okay, it's kid's not on target here, so we'll take another exam to get more
Correct.
information.
Correct.
I know that's what I always did as a teacher as well.
Mhm.
I thought I had one other question. Oh, yes, I did have one other question about the, do we know if this year's forward exam is going to happen?
Well, from every indication in every meeting that I've been going to as the district assessment coordinator, state testing is on. There will not be a waiver. Mm-hmm.
As of today.
Yep, as of today. So we're planning. We're already planning with tech services to be able to do everything online. So
Would students need to come to the school to take?
more
that?
than likely, yes, because they're going to have to be on our district servers or our secure servers to access that. So we'll see where we're at in the spring.
Thank you.
Is that all is that including the ACT too?
Including the ACT.
Okay.
Those were all my questions. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mrs. Salaji. Does anyone else have a question or a comment?
Well, now I have a bunch more, but I don't think we're noticed.
What's that?
I said now I have a bunch more questions, but I don't think we're noticed for
Oh.
that line of talk.
Oh, I see. Well, maybe you
We do
can.
have an education committee meeting.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Maybe you can
I
fit
will
in
talk to
there
Liz.
Or get it
Yeah.
on the agenda.
Yeah.
I love agenditis. Give them to me.
Very good. Well, thank you, Ms. Conrad, for your written report and your presentation tonight, and of course for your support of the district's efforts on the referendum questions. Thank you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
All right, we have two major agenda items left, and in the interest of time, Dr. Cartwright had a request.
I'm just requesting for the board if a motion can be made to amend the agenda to allow us to go ahead and consider the individually considered resolution prior to engaging into workshop item 2 legislative platform.
We would need a motion and a second, and then we need to vote on that.
So moved.
Second.
To move the individually considered resolution prior to the next workshop.
And there were a couple of seconds, I believe.
Kelly was faster.
All right, please call the roll.
Garner,
Aye.
Herzog,
Aye?
Olmsted,
Aye.
Heschel,
Aye.
Solaji,
Aye.
Carlin,
Aye.
Evans,
Aye.
motion carried.
All right, so our next agenda item then moves to the individually considered resolution, which is approval of Act 143 School Safety Plan confirmation letters. Be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approve the school district safety plan confirmation letters for 2020-2021 to fulfill the annual requirements of Act 143, as filed with the Secretary to the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so now we can have some discussion on that, and I believe that Dr. Poquette and Dr. Jones are here to present on that.
They're here to answer any questions that the board may have to direct towards them, so whatever information you may be requesting.
So I'm going to just introduce Dr. Poquette. Dr. Poquette is one of our team members on the EPCOT committee, and she did most of the legwork on this, so I want to kind of turn it over to her, but if you have any questions, we'll both be here. So Dr. Poquette.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And Dr. Burkett, the board members will direct any questions towards you.
Does anyone have a question?
I think she was going to say something, wasn't she?
Would it please the board in order to have a brief report related to this resolution?
Sure.
Dr.
I'm good.
All right, as part of the state of Wisconsin, every year we have to compile a list of school safety letters due to Act 143. So these letters are similar to what you have seen in the past. And again, it will outline any of the safety protocols and procedures we practice with students and staff throughout the school year. Obviously, for confidentiality reasons, we don't want to release and share too much to the public. So if there are specific questions, we're happy to answer those on an individual basis. We take school safety very seriously, and we like to practice our drills and make sure that we have everything in alignment for if something to or would happen to occur, we can properly respond. So the letters you will notice, many schools were able to complete those drills, and you can see what past practices have been.
Other questions or comments?
I'm just happy that the team got through it with COVID, and trying to work that out and how to simulate something when you don't have kids. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no questions or comments, then please call the roll on this resolution.
Herzog?
Aye, yes.
Halsted?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Solaji?
Aye.
Carlin?
Aye.
Evans?
Aye.
Garner?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Drs. Paquette and Jones, for your
Thank
time
you.
tonight. Thank you. Okay, then going back to the revised agenda, we have workshop number 2, which is legislative platform. We all received the staff report on that, and we all were directed to do some homework in preparation tonight, so we'll turn it over to Dr. Cartwright at this time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Herzog. I'm taking a little bit more of a non-traditional role on this, and that I'm serving the board tonight as a facilitator. If at any point in time that you need for me to reverse my role, if you'll please let me know so that I will step out of that facilitator role and try to address any questions that you may need answered as a superintendent. So I greatly appreciate you all understanding that. This is going to be an interactive workshop. And first and foremost, I greatly appreciate all of you putting in that time and energy that's necessary in order for us to have a nice process tonight as we get into some of these discussions. The main objective for tonight, what we're trying to accomplish, is that we're going to have a draft at the end of this workshop. It is not going to be in final format, but you'll be providing enough information for me to be able to go back and start massaging some of the input and feedback that you're receiving, I'm receiving, you're giving. And then from there, the next step following from that is that I will bring it to the legislative committee for their discussion and for their feedback and for any additional massaging of the themes or the messaging and the wording, and then we'll bring it back to the school board as a whole as a resolution for final approval, just so that everybody's on the same page in the process. I wanted to start right away with making sure, just a reminder of what our vision, mission, and values are within the Oshkosh area school district. This is extremely important because this helps guide tonight's conversation. And when we're having a guiding conversation, it's remembering that our vision is that we will be the leader in education through innovation while focusing on the whole child. Secondly to that is our mission. We all, excuse me, that is hard to read. Let me take a look here. We will enrich our community by supporting our students and lead creative and empowered lives. Of course, our core values: engage students and staff, integrity, excellence, responsive improvement, safe learning and working environment, collaborative culture, and of course, always our guiding principle: students first. So again, the process is that the first things we're going to try to accomplish tonight is what's known as creating an objective. In other words, what is your ultimate goal that you as the board would like to accomplish. This provides us with a general overview and the framework for which we will build the remaining steps going forward. In addition to that, the next step process is defining our state platform principles. In other words, what are the areas that you're interested in proceeding regardless of what's going to be on the floor in the legislation? Big picture. What are those things that you really want to make sure that regardless of what we can anticipate or our current situation with COVID or whatever that may be, it stands the test of time, as you might say, and provides that ultimate picture of what are those principles, what are those things that we really hold value to us as a board. And then the last part is going to be defining the 2020-2021 priorities. And these, we are going to be very specific. What are 3 to 5? You don't want to go larger than that. What are 3 to 5 priorities that we want to focus on for this school year? So for the upcoming January legislative session, and as well as what's happening over the summer. And so these priorities are aligned to the principles, which is aligned to your ultimate objective. Does that make, I'm hoping everyone sees that. All right, so when we create an objective, again, what is it that you're ultimately trying to accomplish? And I'd ask for you to come prepared tonight with 3 to 5 words that kind of capture your thoughts about what an objective statement should be. And again, it's really good to refer back to your own mission, vision, guiding principles, everything that we've developed within our strategic plan, because everything comes from our strategic plan and guiding us going forward. I provided for you some example objectives, and it's just to kind of get your brain juices moving, if that makes sense. For example, advocate for policies that provide an equitable, accessible, quality education for all students. It could be advocate the legislature in fulfilling its paramount duty to provide a uniform, efficient, safe, secure, and high-quality system of free public schools that allows students to obtain a high-quality education. Advocate for legislative policies that support our students, employees, and district as a part of our efforts to achieve these goals. If you'll notice, there's one key word on every one of those. Advocate. So ultimately, even, no matter what we come up with, the word that we're going to be looking for is what is it that you as a board are looking to advocate for. So this is where I'm going to take us out of presentation mode, and I'm going to start just typing here some of those things that you have come up with. So who would like to go first? And just give us one word. And then if that word's already been taken, you don't have to repeat it.
I got funding.
Does budget include funding?
And y'all are going to, you know what, I'm wondering if I can do this from here and it'll transfer up there. Because I can't see it. Which is awful.
Do you want to switch places with me?
Let me see real fast
Or I
if we
can move.
if we can do this. And I think this will work.
Yep.
There we go. Okay, much better. Now I can see what I'm typing. Thank you. Funding. What else?
Mental health.
Transparency.
I really like whole child.
I have advocate for our vision. So like always talking about our story, our vision of where we want to be.
I had equitable.
Equity?
Yeah, I provide equitable access to resources, which I think goes with funding, so kind of connecting the equity to funding and.
I can just type that up there.
Yeah.
The thought. Remember, it's words or short phrases.
Yeah, I had phrases.
That's fine.
advocate for all students with all underlined or bolded. Thank you.
I had a thought, and I'm not sure it's right, but I really, when I was thinking about this, is minimizing red tape.
Let me think on that just for a second.
Or maybe improving efficiency, I don't know.
Okay. But I like your idea about red tape because
Yeah.
that gets more to what you're talking about.
It's kind of a nightmare. It's a big,
remove-
it's a big government system, and it's really hard to get stuff done.
Right.
That would kind of fall into my local control.
Yeah.
We can literally say red tape.
Okay. We all know what that means.
The other one I had was services for students who are disadvantaged because of our high poverty rate amongst our population.
Can you be a
But
little
that's
bit more
way-
specific?
Yeah, that's way more than one word.
No,
right?
no, it's a short phrase.
Yeah, just students in need or students. How about just address high rate of free and reduced lunch?
I think, I liked your students in need because
Okay,
that's a little
perfect.
bit broader.
That's perfect.
The reason it's a little bit broader is because it's not only free and reduced lunch, but it also can get into the mental health that we were talking about
Mhm.
earlier and a few other
Perfect.
things.
Lots of needs.
The other phrase I had was, that hasn't been said yet, was just guaranteed high-quality education. I like that.
I'm going to push you on that one just a minute.
Yes.
So when you're talking about high-quality education, because typically that's the responsibility of the school district to provide,
Yes,
correct?
that's true, yes.
So that's the only reason I'm pushing on that one a little bit. So dive a little bit deeper for me to help me understand what you're talking about.
Well, and I was thinking this too along the lines of the providing equitable access. I don't know, let me think about how I was diving
Okay.
a little bit deeper.
So I'm going to put a question
So-
mark beside that one.
No, I can explain it right now. One thing that I always think about, and I need to understand better, is looking at the state legislature and how we approach the state, is there are low spending districts. And we always hear that we are a low spending district. And that's why I provide equitable access to resources. In my mind, I'm thinking for all districts, the low spending districts, I believe need the state to give us some extra support so that we can guarantee high quality education. I do agree with you that that comes at the district level, and I do believe that we provide that as a low spending district, but.
I agree with you, Liz. I have that under my priorities.
Is that under your priorities?
Yeah, so I didn't know which, it was hard to, which is my objective and which is, principles is separate. The objective and priorities they're so intertwined.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I know, I agree with what you're saying.
You just think it comes later?
I had it, well, I just, no, it doesn't, I just happened to put it underneath that one instead.
Yeah.
Another one that I have here, and I'm not sure this is a legislative issue, but I really want to see us diversifying the people that are in our buildings, the adults, our staff.
So that actually a lot of times can come from a variety of different ways. In other words, it could be assist with recruitment strategies.
Yes. And when I say diversification, I mean experiences and thoughts and ideas. I'm not talking skin color.
And that might get into a platform principle. So we'll
Okay.
think about that.
Okay.
It's on a lot of people's legislative objectives, but school safety.
That's a good one.
See, I'm outside the box.
Now you're inside. Other words. Who mentioned transparency? What do you mean by that?
I think when I think about it, when looking over your objectives that you put in here, there's a couple times where it says all students. And I look at that from the perspective of taxpayers of Winnebago County or Oshkosh Area School District, that there's more than just the students that we have here in the Oshkosh Area School District. We have all those kids that are in our boundary that may utilize different sources of schooling and funds that are all taxpayer-based or help, taxpayer-funded. So my thought in transparency was also finding a way to advocate for the fuller picture of what that is in regards to dollars, how those dollars are used, and how those all schools, all students relate together in that concept. Broadly based.
So I'm hearing you say how funding is utilized across the state?
Across the complete district, I guess, is what I'm thinking.
You mean the county maybe, or?
No,
just across the district boundaries?
So we pay for other kids that don't walk through our doors.
Yep.
I believe that there is a level of transparency that needs to be maintained in knowing, we know what those dollars are, but we don't know how those students fare as well, or we have to work really hard to get that information. Does that make sense?
Yes,
I see what you're
understand what you're saying.
I got you.
So you're actually talking about accountability.
True.
And when we're talking about accountability, or accountability for the funds for which the local taxpayers are responsible for those students who are open enrolling or using the private school voucher system. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to make a recommendation that be either dropping down to a principal level or possibly even a priority.
Okay.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yes, I had that.
I have
as
a priority. I have vouchers on a priority.
I have them as a priority too, yes.
Yep.
That's a good one, Kelly.
I think the last subjective word that I have is innovation.
And can you help me understand what you mean by that?
I had a crazy thought that if we could be the first state in the country to have every school district in Wisconsin use STEAM as a learning process throughout their entire curriculum.
That's
Awesome.
Never been done before.
set on your 5-year goal. That would be wonderful.
So innovation to me would be just innovative, creative methods of instruction.
I think that goes along with what Allison was saying about diversifying the district.
Yeah. Yeah, but charters, they've always been a legislative issue, and how do we handle them? They're kind of like the stepchildren of public ed, and yet they can be a beautiful lab for innovation and learning new things, so.
Okay. I think I've captured everything that y'all are saying for here. So what my next steps will be is I will take this list and then I will draft an objective to bring to the legislative committee based off the feedback that you just gave.
Okay.
And I appreciate the conversation, just say, okay, let's talk about that a little bit. This one may belong in this area, those kind of things. So as we start getting into this, if we find that we need to come back and revisit this list and go, yep, that one does need to go back to somewhere else, we can definitely do that. Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, you do all the work, I mean.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no.
Hard to argue.
No, I'm not letting y'all escape like that, because, the things that I can see right now, some of this, because you've got a lot going on here. However, some of the themes that we're seeing, for example, mental health, that really gets into student services, right?
Right.
So even
I have
down
that as
here,
principal.
when we were talking about services for students in need, again, that goes back to student services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but it also crosses over into funding.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, that's
When
one
I
of my
continue
things.
to look up here, well, one of the things that you already said was funding. However, we can actually kind of merge these things a little bit together.
Okay.
Funding to ensure adequate services for our students. And we can put in parentheses, mental health and students in need, right?
Yeah.
So that really, or just kind of hang on to that thought, because every time you start putting something in parentheses, that's actually the next level
Layer
down.
Okay.
Is that making more sense?
Yes.
So local control is definitely something that you want to make sure you do and keep when we talk about all students. And, we can definitely incorporate that into the statement itself somehow. The transparency, I think this is also potentially going to go back into a larger, not maybe, I think it may be the next step, but this really is talking about accountability of funding sources, right?
You can take transparency out and put accountability if that's
Mhm.
more clear. So,
Okay, well,
since transparency was mine, if anyone else wants it, they can have it, but I'm advocating for changing it.
You're very generous. Thank you.
So are you more comfortable with accountability of
I am.
funding sources?
Yep, it's a better word that,
More
it
accurate.
represents better what I was getting to.
No problem. So whole child and all students are going to kind of go together. Now, when we talk about vision and we talk about the Oshkosh Area School District story, I want to think about that for a moment. Because our objective, and as we get into our principles, we're really defining kind of what it is that we're really interested in as a board. You are interested as a board, in order to be able to share. The story component is very important, but that's when you actually are starting to go out and do some of these active advocacy work. So I just want to kind of bring that to the surface to think about. Is because telling a story is a method in which to convey what your priorities are. And it's a highly recommended method because you're personalizing it. So having an understanding of that, I don't know who said vision.
Kelly.
Are you okay if we look at it through those lens, or do you still want to stay strong with this?
No, I agree. I think it is storytelling, and and
Okay.
it's our story. Yep, I agree.
Okay, so all I'm gonna do at this point in time is I'm just gonna do, I'll do a highlight on it and just, we all understand that's gonna be a strike through, okay? Again, equitable access to resources, I think that goes back into funding.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
A lot of this was in funding.
So, again, we spoke about whole child, all students kind of being together.
Yeah.
Remove extraneous barriers and red tape.
Yes.
So this gets into
A lot.
process, right?
Yes.
And procedures.
Yes. And
So
policies.
my question on this one is, does that get into more of maybe a principle? Because we're getting a little bit deeper at this point in time, because if we're still talking about local control, right?
Yeah.
And within local control, we want to make sure that the stuff that we have to do to ensure that we're getting appropriate funding, that we're getting appropriate services, and that we're able to take care of all of our children, we need to be able to cut through that red tape.
Yes. Yeah, I guess the way I see it is globally, the legislature can make things really difficult for us, or we can advocate for making it really simple. So, again, I'm not sure where, yes. And yet, then that's not gonna happen at a local level. I mean, we can always streamline our stuff, right? Like, we have control of that. What we don't have control of is the state. So all of the mandatory things that are constantly, from my perspective, constantly being loaded on school districts.
Correct. So I'll keep it here for right now.
Okay.
I may,
Yeah.
if
I'm open
I
to
have
leaving it.
permission, what I may do
Sure.
is play with it a little bit, maybe massage it.
Okay.
And see if because when we talk about local control, that oftentimes is as a local board, when you are going out for some of these state level things, federal level things,
In this case, we're talking state. Let's say it's applying for grants.
Mhm.
And you get this laundry list of stuff.
Yeah.
That's a requirement that may not
Yes.
have anything to do
Yes.
with the grant.
Yes.
They're limiting your ability to be able to apply,
Right.
which goes back to potentially local control.
Yeah, good.
Do I have a deeper understanding of what
Yeah,
you're looking for?
yeah, you bet.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank
Sure,
you.
Sure.
Again, equitable budget, we're seeing that wonderful word again about budget. Assist in recruitment strategies to diversify districts.
You know, that could go with innovation, too.
Mhm.
You could combine those.
So on innovation, so let's go to that. When we talk about innovation, we're talking about how to be cutting edge in order to keep ahead. We know that the state right now is really has recognized that it's extremely difficult to recruit potentially individuals of color into our state in order so that our students have individuals that look like them in our classrooms. So I'm not just calling it by race, okay?
Yeah, good.
But maybe being able to expand that out just a little bit as well. So for example, I know one of the things that I've been advocating for on the back end is saying, listen, when we talk about I can't say the word.
Reciprocity.
Thank you. This is where some of my impediment comes in. Sorry
Yes.
about that. When we're talking about that, we make it pretty doggone hard because when people come in, they got to take additional courses,
Yeah.
like American Indian course
Yes.
and a few other things.
Yeah.
But if they're already certified as a full teacher over here,
Yes.
why can't that transfer over here?
I don't
Why
know.
are we putting a lot of red tape in the way in
Okay.
order for us to be able to diversify our
Good.
workforce?
Okay.
So, school safety, would everyone agree that this probably falls in line with budget?
Oh.
How so? I'm not sure I follow.
So so we want to think about not only budget, but also policies, right? So it's because oftentimes what will happen is people will put a policy in place, but no, it's an
And not fund
unfunded
it.
mandate.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I was thinking school
Help me.
safety in terms of, the incident at West last year.
Yeah.
And I don't know, what are we doing to make sure that doesn't happen again, or?
I was
So,
along the same lines as Stephanie. I wasn't thinking, when I had school safety on mine, I have it under a principal, but mine was keeping them safe, and I see what you're saying about budget, like cameras and all that. I get that part now. And I was
Okay,
thinking
yeah.
along your line, though, stuff too. I understand what you're saying.
so
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
very,
Scott.
so we're very
Yeah.
fortunate, right? We just received that big
Mhm.
COPS safety grant.
Yep, yep.
And that's going to provide the funding for us to be able to do the randomized metal detecting. Is going to be able to provide for us
Gotcha.
some of the software that
Yep.
our chief needs in order so that anytime police officers or law enforcement is coming to our schools, they know where to go. So unfortunately, a lot of the measures that happen, or for example, if we wanted to get therapy dogs into our schools,
Yes, please.
unfortunately, it costs money,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
think, you could say as we talk about budget, we could also talk about not only budget related to student services, but also
Yeah.
to provide for a safe environment.
Yep.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay,
Good.
yep, got it now.
Is that,
Yeah.
am I hitting where y'all were
Yeah.
thinking?
Yeah, I'm there now, yeah.
Okay.
I was looking at funding a little differently, but I'll wait till you finish.
We can
your
weave it
thought.
together.
Okay.
So.
I was thinking of it more in terms of the numerous school districts in the state who are low-spending districts. And while we got an influx of dollars of, I think it was $300 per student, I think that was only a 3-year kind of a catch-up. I was thinking of it more from more global in terms of helping the lower spending districts bring their level of spending up to whatever the state average is.
Mhm.
Yes.
Which might also include money for safety and security, but might be used in other ways.
So the reason we're struggling with this one
bluntly, is because objective is what?
The big.
The big picture.
Mhm. The
The
umbrella.
next level down on the principles is where we can now get a little bit
Okay.
deeper into
Okay.
budgeting.
Right.
So that will allow us to specifically call out school safety.
Yep. That's- yeah,
Mental
'cause
health.
I did have that.
Um,
As a principal.
you know, those kind of, and it can also help us getting into maybe revamping the entire funding system for Wisconsin. So it doesn't matter if, what district you live in, students across the state have equitable access and resources.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's just, if I may, just a kind of.
Absolutely. Sure.
Okay, everyone okay for right now?
Yep.
Okay, feeling good about this?
Yes.
All right, and let me get back into I'm not presentation, y'all are in presentation. This needs to go back in presentation. So let's get into our principles. Remember, these are the main areas that you want to focus on, regardless of what is on the floor. Regardless of what WASB is bringing forward, what WASDA is bringing forward. It has, these are larger pictures, larger things that you're interested in. So we're about to, as a board again, go ahead and start listing those 5 to 7 general areas, because as you can see, examples here, assessment and accountability. So now we get into the accountability potentially of the open enrollment and private school vouchers. So it could be the education funding, but what I want you to do is I want you to think a little bit more macro, which is kind of what we just did. So we're just going to highlight that one more time just to make sure we're all kind of in consensus with that.
Okay.
And then we will go forward from there. Is everyone in agreement?
Yep.
Okay. So what we found, and I'm going to take us out of presentation mode here. Thank you. What we found, some of the areas, example areas that I gave you was related to like, just that we're kind of all there. I'm putting in the notes just as a little bit of reminder for us. Remember, larger picture and that kind of stuff. So let me ask you this. I heard accountability, and accountability can be used in a variety of different ways. So we will define that down a little bit further here in just a moment. I heard a lot about funding, right? We heard about innovation. That was our other one.
And then student services.
And then student services. Now, we're not stuck to just these 4, but these were the 4 that kind of came out as a pattern within our objective, right? Are there other areas that you're interested in, regardless of what's on the floor, that when it does come on the floor, or you want to advocate for it to go to the floor, that you would be interested in?
School safety.
That's part of funding, I think.
But everything can be part of funding.
Yes.
And I feel like school safety, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I feel like it covers both funding, because we do need funds for the cameras and the.
Yeah.
But I also feel like it covers the mental and behavioral health, which is under student services, right?
It's just, there's, yeah.
To me, that's school safety it reaches into several different.
I just don't think we can put funding and then when we go to put our principles or our priorities down, and then we put them down, and everybody's like, well, that's under funding, that's under funding, that's under funding.
all
Well, we
gonna go
still
back
need
to-
to, everything's under funding, so we
Yep.
still need to, pick those out so that we know we're all about funding, but what parts of the funding do we want
Right.
to really focus on?
So we're going to drill down just a little bit deeper
Okay.
right after this.
Yeah.
So what I would like to do is maybe table that thought, great thought, but think about it. I have a wonder, would y'all prefer, to maybe pull out from student services to specifically talk about school safety and mental health?
Yes. Absolutely, especially mental health, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, school safety, everybody kind of talks about all the time because of what's happening, but the mental health always seems to be like pushed and
And then
pushed,
we
and that needs
probably-
to be.
Yeah, and then we need to also probably add then the students in need. under that as well.
At the what? I didn't
Say it
hear.
again, I'm sorry,
Students
Allison.
in need, we probably should
Oh.
add students in need under there.
And
as
that's why
well.
I'm wondering if we put that with our student services.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
bullet points under
All of them.
student services, yes. Yeah.
I'll make sure I
I
capture
like
that
that
though.
idea better, yeah, okay.
I guess at this point, I'd also like to, in regards to this, staff becomes a pretty important thing to me at this point, and I know it's in there, but finding a way to maintain within the legal parameters of being able to recruit and pay and retain quality and innovative staff, because I think I think the challenge here is that we talk about innovation, but we got to talk about that from the perspective of who's
gonna do
going to
it.
be providing that innovation.
Right.
Right.
And I just don't want us to lose track of that they can be one of our legislative priorities, our staff. I mean, if we think back 10 years ago, they were not a priority in the state budget in any way. They were a target in regards to, reducing staff pay and benefits and stuff like that. And I think it's important for boards, not just our board, but boards to, set that priority from a legal perspective as well.
Right.
Because it wasn't set before.
Right.
And that's how this happened. There was comfortability that took place.
Okay, so that will help us to drill down.
Sure,
Thank you for the background though.
sure.
I have a wonder, and I wanna hit straight on Jim, what you were saying, Mr. Evans, what you were saying. When we're talking about innovation, what I really heard you say is ensuring that we are incorporating the arts as a part of the curriculum. Did I hear that correctly?
Across the board, yeah.
Yeah, and is that what you meant by innovation?
Well, I took innovation from our mission statement, but that would be where I'm aiming.
Where you're leaning more
I'm
towards?
swimming around that idea.
Okay. Is everyone else on the board comfortable if we were to make a revision to that then, in order to specifically call that out?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Does that meet what you're looking for,
Mhm.
Mr. Evans? All right.
So, Dr. Cartwright, I don't have my glasses, so I can't read a word you're typing out there. So if you can verbalize a little bit that you're typing, I'd appreciate
Do
it.
you want me to read it for you?
Incorporation of arts, or not incorporation, how about infusion?
Fusion or integration?
Ooh, I like infusion.
Infusion.
And I'm going to be a little bit, only because, a lot of times legislators don't get into curriculum stuff.
Right.
But we could definitely say something to the effect of like infusion of arts into school programming.
Oh, okay.
That sounds good.
Which would include your curriculum.
Yeah.
Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, I like it. It says infusion of arts into school programming.
I was just gonna
Thanks.
do
Thanks.
that.
Up. That was not where I meant to go. Here we go. Here we go, Bob.
Oh, that's better. Thanks. I got a board of advocates here for me.
Okay, are we all good with this? Is there anything else that we need to add to this?
If you guys, I just want to throw this out there. Ed under principle was our vision. But all of this is our vision, right? I mean, I've answered my questions. I'm good. You know me, I just gotta talk about it.
I love it.
And then I got it. I worked through it.
Are you good?
Use the word
I'm the same way, Kelly.
I know.
sometimes
When I said
process it
that, I
as
actually
speak.
thought of you in my head. I'm like, I sound like Liz right now.
Thank you. I have facilities down under here. I don't know if we need to add it. That might come later.
That is a good point, because we're literally in the middle of it.
And we were able to get a ton of funding through the energy efficiency
Yep.
I mean,
Right.
that
Yes.
paid for a lot of improvements throughout our
That-
district, and that was a legislative issue.
See, that's what I feel, like from conversations I've heard from you guys,
Yeah.
because I wasn't here then, I feel like there used to be more funding available for facilities.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it would be fun to be a school board member while that happens, because you all talk about it so well, and I'm like, I never got that chance. So that's why facilities came to me.
I had that listed too, and I had it listed because of that energy efficiency thing.
Yeah.
I just thought that would be down one more level, yeah.
Yeah, and it might be.
Priority?
Underfunding.
Continuing to work on the platform principles, because remember what we're doing is we're kind of taking this thing right here and we're
Yeah,
going
funneling it
this.
down.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is just brainstorming at this point.
So why is school safety linked to mental health? Because I see those as two separate things.
I would agree with you. If the board agrees with you.
Sure. Yeah. Mental health needs to really stand on its own.
Yeah, and we don't want to associate
Yes.
mental health with school
With
safety.
safety. Yeah.
Thank you.
If everyone is okay with
I
that.
agree with that.
Yeah, good call, Steph.
100%.
Although I think another way to look at that is that if you provide mental health services
Yes.
to students who need them, that may increase your school safety.
That may also be true, or at least promote a safe environment.
Thank you, that's a
Right.
better way to put it.
Yep.
Thank you.
I agree with that.
So those do intertwine.
Mhm.
What my word of, okay, I'm putting my superintendent hat on. So thank y'all for that. I would caution you a little bit with intertwining the two,
Yeah,
just a
I
little bit,
agree.
because unfortunately, some acts that happen, that are related to school safety are not associated with mental health,
Yes, true.
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Yes.
It may be, unfortunately, it may be something that, we don't deal with this around here, so knock on wood, thank goodness. But it could be like a gang activity kind of thing,
Mhm.
that's happening. That does not necessarily have to do with mental health.
Okay, just a fight,
Instead, unfortunately, it has to deal with, resources available,
Socioeconomic.
involvement, sense
Well-
of belonging,
Mhm.
community.
Well, school safety has to do with who's in the building and fire drills or any of that kind of stuff too,
Right.
so, or tornado drills,
Yeah.
so it is completely, yeah.
Is everybody okay with that
Yeah.
understanding? I appreciate it. All right, I'll put my
Yes.
facilitator hat back on.
I did want to add like mental health resources. I don't know why that.
It'll come next.
Okay, okay.
It will come next, absolutely.
I'm trying to determine if equity fits into one or more of these, or if it might be listed on its own.
Equity is a principle.
I thought equity was the objective.
I
Okay.
always connect in my mind in Wisconsin equity to funding, because I feel like, as you talked about, Dr. Herzog, that if we had more equity in funding, low spending districts would be able to come up to the state average. Or it also goes with student services, right? We should be reimbursed more for students who have higher needs.
Mm.
So I always think of equity, it covers a lot of things, but whenever I think of funding, I want to add the word equity in front of it, like.
Yeah, so equity is going to hit a good portion of all the areas that you have listed. And when you think about what Mr. Peschel was saying related to accountability and specifically open enrollment and the voucher system, we're looking to ensure that there are equitable standards
Yes.
for the public school
Yes.
district and the private schools, correct?
Mhm.
When we're talking about funding, it could be revamping the entire funding model in
Mhm.
order to ensure
Yeah.
that there's equitable
Yep.
opportunity across the entire
Mhm.
state, regardless of what district you live in.
Mhm.
When you talk about equity, infusion of arts into school program is making sure that those opportunities are provided for all students
Mhm.
within the districts, regardless if they're rural,
Mhm.
urban, suburban,
Mhm.
or regardless of economic status. Student services, the students in need, it speaks to the heart of that.
Right.
School safety, yet again, you can easily infuse equity into that. Mental health, personnel, definitely,
Mhm.
because we're trying to diversify and make sure that we're reaching all populations.
Facilities.
And likewise with facilities, because right now, especially if you're looking for major capital projects, i.e. new buildings,
or even significant renovation of buildings, the burden is placed upon local communities in which to provide for that. And albeit that probably is a strategy, but should all of that come from your local community? 100%?
Right, yeah.
Or should it be somehow subsidized by the state?
Thank you.
I agree.
Thank you for that.
So equity goes in front of all of it.
Yeah,
right.
essentially.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify one thing.
Sure.
I don't know who said it, but like maybe if we had more mental health services, then our schools would be safer. I just wanted to remind us that, you know, the vast majority of people that have mental health challenges are not dangerous, and they want to hurt themselves, not other people. And so when we associate safety with mental health and that kind of stuff, it's feeding the stigma that mental health people are dangerous, et cetera. So I had to say that. Thank you.
All right, Superintendent Hatt, Ms. Carlin, you are absolutely correct on that. I cannot ditto that any stronger than what you just did, because with that stigma, individuals who do need assistance will be hesitant in order to go get that. So thank you very much.
Thank you for letting me.
Okay, are we good now? All right. So now we're going to drill down even more. Woohoo! So let's take a look at this. All right, so for each area we just identified, let's think about 1 to 5 specific points that we can use to write each of our principal, okay?
Okay.
So I'm looking for y'all to focus in on some of those points, and I will come back and kind of write these out a little bit further, if that makes any sense. But I gave you some examples. I'm interacting with you in the past and having multiple conversations with you. I kind of gave you some examples on what I was kind of thinking that some of that y'all would be talking about tonight. So I just kind of projected a little bit forward.
Okay.
So, for example, assessment accountability, Mr. Peschel, I think that kind of hits what you were looking for, possibly. But anyway.
Yeah, I like the first bullet in education funding as well. There's part of that one that I like as well.
Absolutely. So what we will do at this point is I'm just going to take a note for myself. I appreciate that. And again, on this one, we will break, obviously, per our discussion that we just had right now, we would definitely break this apart with school safety and mental health. So let's go ahead and proceed into the next slide.
Can I just ask a question just so that it's formulating in my head? So just looking at what we have in regards to these, my computer is, these platform principles. It looks like what we're trying to do is we're trying to break down into what we believe some of the solutions are to getting to these areas. If we want to improve mental health, here's our 2 or 3 solution steps that we want to get to there, and we want to advocate for those.
You are absolutely correct, because
Okay.
the last thing you want to do is go and advocate for a problem and not have a potential solution to the problem. Because at that point in time, all you're doing is coming across as, pardon, but whiny.
Yep.
I need more money. Well, what do you need more money for? Well, I need more money for student services. What about student services? I need more money so that we can provide therapy dogs within our schools in order to address the needs of our students, and so that the therapy
Sure.
dogs can interact with our students in order to assist with mental health. You see, you see how we're drilling it down?
So this is part of the I think the meeting where we get to be innovative
That
and
is
thinking of
correct.
like what our solutions are to a couple of things. Like if we want to see something different in our district than what that maybe we saw in a Madison district, and we want to try it here, this is the spot where we can get really creative with that. So just putting that out there.
And it can go the opposite direction too. It's just about not innovating for newer things, but stopping things that aren't working. For instance, stopping the private vouchers. You know, going with why we need to stop that, not, you know, the solution is, this is, you know, we all know, but yeah. It's going to be the opposite side too.
So does everybody have a common understanding of where we're headed for? Thank you very much, Mr. Peschel.
Sure.
Okay. So these are our agreed upon areas that we listed. And just so everyone can see it, I'll type them here and I'll just refresh the screen so that everyone can have access to seeing what I'm typing. Is that okay? When we talk about accountability, what specifically are you talking about in relationship to accountability?
So now, are we moving on to priorities? Is that what you're doing?
Nope, we're taking our principles, and these would be regardless of what's on the floor.
Yep.
These are things that we would want to advocate for. These are the solutions to what we view as areas that we want to focus in on. And we would actively go out and either, when it comes on the floor, we have this ready to go, or we say, under our priorities, we're going to bring this forward in order to try to get it onto the floor.
Okay.
And it's okay if you have this in your priorities, you know, in other words, you have this, and then your priorities are as dittoed in the priorities. Because all you're doing, the priorities is when you're taking a look at your principles, of your principles, what are those 3 to 5 things that you really want to focus on?
So you want us to, never mind. Yep, good, okay.
So, with accountability.
So what is the problem with accountability? That we don't have it? That we don't have measures of accountability? That there's not enough accountability? We don't have a system for holding people accountable?
So what I was hearing you say is that, or Mr. Peschel, when he explained what he meant by that, what I was hearing him say is the problem that we have right now is that there are students for which our local tax dollars are supporting to not be in the Oshkosh area school district. They're either open enrollment or they are going into private schools. So with the open enrollment, for the most part, if it's another public school,
dollars follow the kid.
The dollars follows the children. However, the accountability for that, that other public school district is held to that pretty much that same standard. However, if they potentially private enroll and go to a private school, that private school may or may not be held. Have to take all the exam. Have to take the full exam.
So it's the accountability for the schools that are not public.
That's correct.
Okay.
So accountability up here is strictly for the vouchers. It's not accountability for anything else.
We can define accountability any way you want to.
Exactly.
We're just focusing on one thing right now.
We're talking about vouchers. Okay.
Did I capture what you're interested in? What's a potential solution?
For me, I have vouchers as a priority for me.
Okay.
Try to turn that around and help them understand what that is.
So I guess let's just formalize, just like my thought, like, for me, I don't know that I have a problem with vouchers. I think it's okay if a parent thinks that they want to take their child and put it in a private school where they might get this certain benefit or education. Because maybe it's geared in a different direction. That's the way that they want their kids to go, and that's fine. But I think it's important that we know and understand how that relates to the public standards. Knowing that information, I think I don't know that I'm formalizing the words
so
right.
So you're talking that we get this, we get the funding, and we have standards that we have to be accountable to. But when the money follows the student and pays for a private education at a private school by a voucher, by taxpayer money, then they should be held accountable to the same standards as the public school does.
Yeah. That's my feeling.
I agree.
So.
Am I capturing this a little bit, what you're trying to say? So in other words, students attending private schools through public funding must participate in assessment requirements that students in public schools must take?
Am I capturing that?
I think that's what they were saying.
I think that's,
That's what Bob is saying.
yes.
And it's okay that we don't agree.
Mhm.
Like, I
Correct.
wholeheartedly have no problem with vouchers. I have no problem with private schools, and I don't agree with any of this, but, I mean, I get that I'm only one of 7.
But I also want to say that I don't have a problem with vouchers either.
Yep.
I just believe that there should be some accountability to that, to the public, and to the, you know, if we're talking about local control.
So how can we do it? Would it be like through our budgeting? Like, how do we create the transparency or the
Sure.
accountability that you were talking about so that people know? As long as people know. I think that's what I'm hearing from you. Like,
Yes, and I don't have a path of how to
Yeah,
get there.
I don't either.
I think I
I
have
mean,
one
if I were
generally.
to hypothesize a path, I mean, if we wanted to talk about this from a local perspective, we would implore our superintendent to create partnerships with those entities or schools to encourage them to share data or to share that type of information.
Okay.
It may not even be a funding question at that point.
Okay.
If we can.
So it's about performance or
It could be-
outcomes.
It could be about performance
Okay.
and outcomes.
All right.
So, but, I mean, that brings in that greater accountability because we're the taxing source on that.
Yeah.
You know?
So you're speaking for the citizens that are paying those
Correct.
tax dollars,
I think
saying
that's-
that they're paying for these students to go to this particular school, but they don't know how, like, they can look up all of our report cards, but they can't look up those
Correct.
students. Okay,
Aha.
Yep.
yep, gotcha, okay.
That I can get behind.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and if we want to have the conversation about how we should be funding, you know, voucher schools, that's, in my mind, that's a different tangent from this.
That's a different principle than accountability. Okay, gotcha.
And then we can disagree with each other.
I don't know if this is an accountability issue or not, but I think, Dr. Cartwright, you've said that private school X will report, or the state or somebody reports that they have 50 voucher students. But you don't know their zip codes, so you don't know if they're from the Oshkosh Area School District or they're from some surrounding district. But that impacts our local tax impact. I don't know if that goes under funding, but that's a concern I have, that we don't know that those students are actually from our district and the voucher money is following them.
Yeah, so I want to better understand what you're saying there. So if we know, say there's students in Omro who are going to the private schools, using the voucher system to attend the private schools in Oshkosh, that does not affect our tax impact, right?
No.
It affects Omro's.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that's how I guess.
I'm capturing all this, I promise I'm about to post it.
I'm glad we're having this conversation because these are all the things that, how we feel, and we all have to have these discussions. I mean, that comes down to, I think that this is a great, what we're using right now and what we're doing, our objective and our principles and our priorities. But I think we also, after this, have to have a conversation of, when I read through here, Bob, you know, I read through all of this, is it that delegate that we're putting that's going and having these conversations, the liaison, or is it the whole board talking about, make sure we agree on these, you know,
Yeah.
before they come?
Right.
That's a whole different,
Yeah. And
because
that's,
just now, having these discussions that our board never agrees on anything. If the public doesn't know that, we always, you know, that's why we always come together to try to talk through things, and so that's really important too. Like, after this is done, we probably have to have a conversation of are we doing it as a board? Or are we doing it like some of these other districts are doing it, where there's just that one person that goes in and there's
Sure.
that one person in between? So that's for a later date.
Yes.
and we might choose that differently.
Yeah.
That, you know,
For each-
depending on what that priority is or what
Absolutely.
that goal is too. That might
Yep, I agree.
might be, you know, that's Dr. Cartwright, or maybe that's a contingent of the board, or you know, it's, you know, then there's an advocacy where we go down to Madison and meet with legislators
Yep.
down there, or take part in public forums down there
Yeah.
on
So-
behalf of that stuff.
Yep.
that a lot of that is gonna be related to practice.
Yes.
And tonight, we're just trying to figure out the what.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. I was just saying this is a really good conversation to have now, so that we know what the practices are. That'll be really good.
Okay, I think I may have captured what you were trying to say, so if you'll read the three there and make sure I did appropriately capture.
Yes, now that I'm reading through, I guess I have a different question for Dr. Herzog. So is this saying that we have a concern that some students that may be in a different school district are using our taxpayer funds to receive a voucher? Is that a concern that we have?
So here's the concern. The
Okay.
concern is right now, a list is provided to the DPI from the private, this is my understanding. So I'm big picture ballparking this. I may not be completely accurate on the details, okay? A list is provided, and let's say when they registered for the school in kindergarten, they were an Oshkosh Area School District student.
Yes.
They're now in 3rd grade. They've moved to Omro. And because they originally started in the Oshkosh Area School District, we have no way to validate if that student is still our student or not.
Yeah.
We have to trust that it's been verified. There's no transparency in that process. And then it's hidden behind the law of FERPA. But unfortunately, in this case, this is not about FERPA. This is about accountability of public tax dollars for our community.
I think you're correct in that. My understanding is that they only have to register once, as far as giving their address, and then they're in the system.
And I would build on that, and I think this sometimes in my head also goes with equity of funding, but with the voucher program, one thing I would like to see, and I don't know if anyone else on the board agrees with me about this, so you said they only have to apply once.
I believe that's true. I could
And
be wrong.
so they could qualify by having the low, it's 300%, I think, of poverty. And then the parents' income could drastically increase, and we would continue to pay from kindergarten to 12th grade. And that is something that has never sat well with me. I feel like there should, our students who are on free and reduced lunch have to reapply every year to get funds for free and reduced lunch. But our students who are using voucher systems to go to private schools do not. So take my own family, for example. I have 4 kids, right? So if I put all of them in a voucher school, that would be a lot of money from the district. And in a couple years, I'll be able to go back to work full-time working because all my kids will be in school. And our income as a family could double. And we would no longer qualify. But because I'd applied while I was a stay-at-home parent, and while my husband's salary hasn't,
For 4 kids. for
boosted
12
up.
years each.
If I had applied, for 4 kids, all 4 of them could go for 13 years, and I would never have to reapply. And I mean, like I said, our income could double, it could triple by the time the last one's, I'd love it if it did, by the time the last one is a senior in high school, and I would still be getting taxpayer funds to pay for a private education. And that is something I've always wanted to advocate, that I
So, Ms. Lodge,
have
I
some
think we
struggles with.
captured this, verify on an annual basis eligibility requirements for the private school voucher program.
Yes, that's a very simple way to say everything that I just shared.
And what I was explaining prior to that would be the transparency of the verification process by allowing school districts to validate that students using the private school voucher are within the school district's boundaries.
Yeah.
And I should put in there a clarifying statement on an annual basis.
Yes, because if there is movement each year.
So I've added that in. When we were starting to talk about the first bullet point here, then y'all went here. So I want to make sure I captured this accurately. The amount of dollars being assessed on property taxes for private school vouchers is listed for each each. Did that accurately capture what you were discussing?
It's one way to let people know.
Okay.
Is there anything, now, so y'all really kind of got into, when we were talking about accountability, you really got into private school vouchers.
Yes.
Almost exclusively, it looks
Are you
like.
saying that we should figure out ways to hold ourselves more accountable?
Heck no.
We do those things, though. They register every year, they validate their addresses, anyway, moving on.
So you just put that name on there, right?
I just did.
Accountability Private School Voucher Program?
Yes,
Okay.
only because I'm typing from
Good.
my computer, and I have to escape out of presentation mode and
Sure.
then put it back in so y'all can see what I typed.
Okay. No, it's good clarity that you did that. So.
Anything else that you can think of? We can always come back and, you know, between now and you can't sleep in 2 weeks, or the next time, well, actually not too much longer, because we're meeting soon, the legislative committee. Okay.
Next Thursday? Jim?
Yep.
Yeah.
In other words, this is not locked in stone, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And I'm not
Everyone
sure.
okay so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Funding.
Oh, boy.
Right?
You should add like 7 pages right now.
So I heard from Dr. Herzog, create a system, a funding system that allows for equitable spending per student across the state.
Would that be similar to like, to help boost up these low spending districts?
Yeah,
Same
specifically
thing.
aimed at low spending.
The low
districts.
spend, right, because
Yeah.
that's what I have
Well,
as a priority, yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna do a little stretch on that.
Sure.
The way up, you can't see it. This pretty much is kind of like saying scrap our current funding system and
Yes.
start new.
Please.
Oh, okay.
The
And
world's most
what it's
complicated.
saying is, what I was referencing.
I'd rather do that than try to catch up.
That's what this is saying.
That'd be innovative.
Yes.
Feel and replace.
Simplifying can be innovative.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so complicated now, I don't think anybody understands it.
Can we add in there so that it comes out when it should, so that we don't have to short-term borrow constantly?
If it was simple.
We would have to do that too.
Well, let's talk about that, because that is something in and of itself, right?
But they would have to meet a deadline.
Provide.
They'd have to meet first.
Oh, my gosh.
What?
I love how Allison's over there doodling, and every once in a while she just throws out, but that would have to do that.
How about a deadline,
Yeah.
everyone? How about you all give us a number when we need it? Do some of my best thinking, doodling.
So what I'm hearing you say is for, to avoid districts.
I do my best thinking rocking. When you see me start rocking, that's when I was like, oh, now I got it. I get it.
What's the word I'm looking for?
What have you got so far on that one?
Well,
It's coming back.
Provide funding to school districts.
To avoid districts and short-term borrow and.
I know what I want. And y'all can help.
Hold stop.
Of course, when we're
Or
out on TV.
organic sparkling water.
Yes.
Thank you, yeah, make that clarification.
Yeah.
Okay, so
'Cause they can't
provide
see us.
funding to school districts on a quarterly basis to avoid districts having to short-term borrow and efficiently use tax dollars. Of course, we'll massage this a little bit more, but.
That would be interesting if we had a quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Doesn't, there,
This is
correct
a
me if
blue
I'm
ribbon,
wrong.
this is a blue ribbon, recommendation, by the way.
That's a good idea.
And also the Wisconsin Association of
Stabilizes.
School Boards.
Right. This was, Luther Olson was trying to
Uh-huh.
advocate for this one.
That's, yeah, I like it.
I think, doesn't Minnesota do that?
Ah.
Where their budget falls differently, because I know there's districts, different states out there that don't ever have to, they're like, when you talk about short-term borrowing, they're like, what? Like, what do you mean? Yeah.
It's fine when the interest rates are low, but.
So what else about funding are you looking for? Because funding's a big area.
I believe you had said it, Dr. Cartwright, earlier, that with facilities, I would love to see the state match a percentage of facility costs.
Mm-hmm.
When new
Like
buildings
preventative,
are
maybe
built.
even,
yeah.
Or preventative, yeah. I think it would be.
For school safety, with all the new stuff that they want people to do, within the facilities or any, when they change what instead of having everything grandfathered, maybe they should give a percentage of money to bring that up to date.
Fix it, yeah.
I see so there's a lot of facilities.
deferred
So
maintenance.
I'm going to put that under facilities itself. So can you repeat
Oh,
that?
yeah, I forgot that's down there, huh?
Yeah, sorry about that.
That
So
works.
can you repeat that for me, Ms. Lodge?
I wrote, create funding that matches the percentage of building costs, and you can change that wording, but that's specifically how I had it in my bullet point. And so I don't know if that was, I was thinking more specifically of new buildings. I know that there are some states that do that, that provide, I don't know that it's a percentage, but they provide a certain amount of state funds to update facilities.
Yeah.
Build new, but it also could include updating the safety mandates that they create, right? No more unfunded mandates, gosh, that'd be nice.
For funding, would we do mental health or special education?
So Barb, do you remember Dr. Brown? She was always talking about wraparound services. It was one of her dreams. And I don't remember enough about it, but I think that would fit in funding
I think
for
you're right, and
mental
unfortunately,
health.
right now, I can't recall the details on that.
Yeah. She had just this really amazing idea to like have all of the services provided to children in the building that they're in. And I know we're doing that a little bit, here and there, pockets of services, but I don't know. I don't have it well thought out.
It might come to you, though, and then we can have it.
Draw some more scores.
Sorry, I'll get back to doodling.
You'll get it.
It'll come to me.
Well, again, when we talk about equity and, excuse me, increase special education funding to 60%.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
Meaning the state funds 60% of the cost for, yeah.
Is there anything in the budget like that for mental health? No. So that needs to be,
I don't think so.
no, because it's such a newer.
I know there's been some talk through the Wisconsin Association of School Boards of, I think they're talking about it as established categorical aids specific for mental health, so that.
Okay.
And they want that to be new money. They don't want it taken from some other.
That would be great. Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to capture y'all as quickly
No,
as I can.
as we're talking, yeah.
May I put my superintendent hat on and make a
Mhm,
recommendation?
please, yeah.
I'm gonna go backwards just a little bit. Increase funding level to cover 60% of costs associated for students with disabilities.
Yep.
Can we do like a sub-bullet on that? Also create a leveled approach on funding levels for them? In other
What
words.
does that mean?
Because the cost associated with a student who has an articulation problem versus a
Yes.
student who's medically complex,
Oh,
requires physical
sure.
therapy, occupational therapy.
Yep.
Right now, it's flat reimbursement.
Right, that makes no sense.
And
Oh,
so I would
yeah.
recommend having
I like that
a
idea.
tiered approach
Yes.
based upon the
needs of the student.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
That's actually a much more efficient use.
Absolutely.
That's a better approach, right?
Yes.
It's a more equitable approach.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
I'll catch y'all up to where I'm at, make sure I'm doing that.
Okay. So this is what I was hearing you say, is provide additional funding for students on free and reduced lunch. In other words, students of poverty. Then I heard you talk about increased funding level to cover 60% of costs associated for students with disabilities. And what I just mentioned was create a leveled approach on funding levels based on the level of need for students with disabilities.
I'm okay with that. I'm just wondering though, do we really need the 60% in there then? If the sub-point is to create a leveled approach, would it be all right to say increased funding level of costs associated with students with disabilities? Or create a leveled approach to that, to combine them somehow?
How about this? I think you mean like this. How's this? Give me just a quick second.
Okay.
Does that do it?
Or at least
There you go, that's good.
to cover maybe up to 60% of the costs? Well, no, I guess.
No, at
that's
least.
fine.
Grammar
That's fine.
hammer.
That's good. That's fine. I love it.
Well, up to would mean only going to.
Right, we want at
says
least.
a
Minimum.
establishes a
That's the
floor
minimum of
rather than a
60.
ceiling.
Right.
Ideally, a new funding system would be ideal, but if that doesn't happen, it'd be nice to have the state get back to their 2/3 funding.
That would also be great.
That would be great. Do you know, I was thinking about funding and how we have to ask for this and then it just dawned on me, I'm like, I am so tired of asking, like I'm asking for a handout all the time with funding
Our
for
funding
public
has gone down
education
over
when
time.
it's by law that they have to, you know what I mean? Like, it's why does it sound like when schools ask for money from the government, that sounds like they're begging or like
They're begging for their own money.
begging for the
Right.
money that you want us to educate students. It's a foundation of America. We educate our students. It's free public education. And then I feel like we're constantly having to beg for the money that every American relies on to educate their child, right? Like I thought about that the other day. It was kind of like, it's frustrating. And
It's a
I'm
good
sure
question.
every single, person in education feels the same way sometimes. So it's just difficult.
Did we want to add funding for mental health services?
So let's add that under mental health.
Okay, okay.
So, and then do we also want to put in something about funding transportation services? Whether it's, rural busing into the districts or urban busing within the community. So I don't know.
That
how
is
to
a
best
big,
fund that.
big part of our budget, and it keeps going, and that cost fluctuates, I'm sure, with gas prices too, with the different transportation, what
Right.
we're using, what they charge us.
Goes up much faster than it comes down.
Right. Yeah.
So provide funding that matches, give me just a moment. Actual cost for transportation operation.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Another equity example.
So is this the second page?
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, here's your first page. I just ran out of space.
Yep. I know.
We're only on 2. I said 7.
Right?
So when we were doing our objectives, was there anything on the objectives list that was funding? Because I feel like our objective list was longer than our
Longer.
principals list.
I think
So-
the first one on there was funding.
Right, but was there anything under, okay, yes, see, mental health, accountability, whole child equity, red tape,
School safety.
local control budget,
Yeah, we have
assist
our own
recruitment
board budget
strategies,
related to that.
innovation, school safety, students with needs. Yeah, so the only thing that we haven't looked at is the recruitment. Oh, no, is that on the funding?
No, it'd be
No,
under,
yeah.
it would be under its own personnel.
Right, okay. Thank you for going back, I appreciate it.
May I put my superintendent hat back on?
Mhm.
Or may I make a recommendation that they provide full funding of, for any state regulations and mandates that they make
Yeah.
in school
Yes.
districts?
That'd be
No,
awesome.
I'd say that, no more unfunded mandates. If government could do that at every level,
Yes.
they might start funding stuff, or they'd stop mandating stuff, I don't know, but.
Well, that's exactly what I was just talking about. You just keep doing these things, but then don't fund it, and then all of a sudden,
I was
Yeah.
looking at another
Red tape.
school districts, what we're doing here, and they had, no unfunded mandates. And at the bottom of it, they listed all the unfunded mandates that they have in that district. It was $2 million.
Oh.
Oh, man.
Wow.
wow. I'd be curious what ours would be, because we're a pretty big district.
So to do that and then cap revenue limits, I mean, that
That'd be good
hurts.
information when you go to advocate to these people. This is how the mandates that we have had imposed from the state, this is what it's costing our budget.
Yeah.
And you have not, since these mandates, you have not increased our budget to cover these.
Yeah.
And we can't increase our revenue limit. We're
Right.
locked in.
Right.
And that's kind of where I was talking about right here.
Okay.
And I would have to, I'll be frank with you, I need to get with Drew, Mr. Mehines, in order to make sure that I'm stating this accurately.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Okay?
okay.
But the principle being is that rather than 9,700 being the top, the
Right.
top, we say that's the floor, and that if our community is willing to go above that, we can go above that, basically. Is establishing what the minimum is rather than the maximum.
Okay.
Is it the intention that we're going to get through all of these tonight?
I was about to ask that question for you and ask, do we want to have like?
It's after 9 o'clock, my brain stops working.
If we have maybe a
Yeah,
cutoff
right on.
point, would I have enough information from you to where I can flush some more of these out, on your behalf if you would like? I know, and then bring it to the legislative committee just for continued follow-up and conversation. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're done.
No, we can continue.
And we
but
can
just
bring
not
this,
tonight.
we can bring this
Yeah,
back.
I would say we can even just continue right here with another board meeting.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
Pick where we left off.
yeah, pick up where we left off. It doesn't necessarily have to go back just to legislation, and then they get to have to, have that responsibility of all those decisions without 7 of us.
Knowing what our futures are on the
Yeah.
agenda, typically at the first meeting in December, we would be talking about like our school report cards and our district
Yeah.
report card, which we
Okay.
don't have.
Right.
So this could easily
This
take
could
the
be
place
our-
of that,
Okay.
if that's the desire of the board.
Yeah,
Sure.
and then we'd still have it done in time for that wouldn't make it too close, right, for when the legislature starts in January.
Right, yeah. I don't think so.
Right.
Not
And
at all.
in the interim, again, the legislative committee can meet on this.
Yeah.
And we can continue
You
to
get
flush some
started.
of this out and bring it back to you.
As a board, yeah.
As a
the next
board,
meeting, yep.
and workshop it again, and
Mhm.
then your second board meeting in December, you could, finalize it.
Yep.
Nice.
I think that sounds like a great idea.
I think so too.
Everyone in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Evans, I know that's your committee, are you good with that?
Yep.
Thank you, Alice.
Okay. So what I will do is, I'll memorialize this, and then I'll make sure that all of you get a copy of it,
Yeah.
just for your own notes.
Okay.
That we're
as
still
we
on
go-
funding,
As we go
yeah.
forward.
Perfect.
Thank you.
No, thank you, and I appreciate the conversation. As you can tell, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to at least give you the probing questions to let y'all have the discussion and try to capture what you're saying.
No, this is good. This is the stuff that I like to do. This
Yeah,
is the stuff
we
that
do
I
this all the
enjoy about
time.
being on the board.
I agree.
This is the stuff where I'm like, oh, that was great.
Do we need to
Yep.
Yeah, we've got a couple of things to wrap up here.
We're not dismissed just yet.
Just get up, walk out.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, Barb.
Okay, see you guys. Okay, so we still have the backside of the agenda, which is request for any future agenda items. I think we just covered one in terms of continuing this conversation and then involving the legislative committee, obviously. Are there any announcements at this point? I just have two very short ones. In a year when students are in school full time, many of our schools recognize and honor our military veterans, and that wouldn't be happening this year. But I would encourage people to reach out to veterans in our community or within their families. And of course, we can do that at any time of the year, but I think at this time of year in particular, it's important to do that. Also, the North High Communities group has established the Veterans Courtyard between the tennis courts and it's in the area of the tennis courts and the entry to the field house. And I know they were going to be putting some additional bricks in there, so that would be perhaps a meaningful thing for some individuals to take a look at. And the other announcement is that American Education Week is coming up November 16 to 20. This is an opportunity to thank those individuals who serve in our public schools for the work they do each and every day to make positive differences in the lives of our students. So I would encourage everyone to reach out to an employee of a district and thank them for the work that they're doing. We know that all district personnel are doing an extraordinary job this year, and while we always appreciate the efforts that they put forth on behalf of our students and our parents, this would be a great year to make sure that we reach out and let these individuals know that they are valued and that we value what they do every day. Mr. Feschel.
I don't want to take away from you, so if you have more to say, I just wanted my hand up to be acknowledged so that I can speak.
No, that's all. That's
Okay.
all I had to say. American Education Week is November 16 to 20. We meet again on November 18th. That's all I had on announcements.
Okay. So you moved really quickly you transitioned really quickly from
Future agenda
yeah,
items?
future agenda items.
Oh, I see.
into announcements. So, but I do have a couple announcements.
Okay.
I guess I wanted to gauge. Let me take a deep breath before I say this.
Uh-oh. Liz like, okay.
You should have. You can at any time, by the way. So, it's having a board discussion and even potentially a special meeting to discuss the matrix and how we move through the matrix again. The model matrix. I'm just going to express myself without going into great detail and creating great conversation about it. I'm really concerned with the transition that we've done. And let me apologize too, because I was late and you guys might have talked about this and I didn't get that. So I'm sorry about that. But I have a concern in how we're being so flexible in regards to the use of models and what I perceive in regards to how that matrix is being used to make decisions. And I'm really close to wanting to call a special meeting to having a greater conversation with the board about that. And I don't want to rip open wounds again and do what we did before, but.
So it's a request for agenda, it's a request
It
for
is.
future. What do we have to do to be able to put on the list? Does there have to, I don't remember how.
I believe it's supposed to be 2 board members.
There has to be one other person that agrees that we can put it on there.
Right.
Okay, so.
So if one other person in the room wants to do it, then
Okay.
it goes on the list.
I would like to.
So you're asking for an agenda item at our next meeting, or you're asking for, what are you asking for? I'm not really clear, I'm sorry.
I don't want another meeting, but I believe it has to be done in another meeting because I think it's a conversation that may give direction to Dr. Cartwright and her staff in regards to how we move through these models again. So.
I just want to interject one
Go
thing.
for it.
So what we did originally, my assumption from what we did originally was that we gave the executive team a lot of authority to move and to change the matrix how they saw fit, given how things continue to change and we learn, right? Is that something that you want to now address? You want to
Yes.
change the level of authority?
I do, and I'm trying really hard to balance the above the line, below the line
Yeah,
type thing here.
absolutely.
And I think the only way to have that is to have a conversation about that. Because that's how we did it originally, is we had a conversation about it.
Mhm.
And then we agreed upon the matrix. And I think, at least I have concerns with the flexibility of the matrix to decide models.
Mhm.
And I feel the need to express that publicly
Okay.
and representatively.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So,
Okay.
so my feeling.
So what exactly is the meeting going to be on? Changing the matrix or changing of?
the authority of the
The
executive
authority
team.
of that matrix.
It's the authority of the matrix.
Okay.
So that's different.
And Steph, do you
than
still
the
agree
past.
on that then?
Well, the only reason that I was thinking that I would support something like that is because we are all getting a lot of emails asking us to do something, and under the perception, or maybe it's not aware that we had a meeting and gave the executive team that power. I don't think the community understands that, and so we're getting a lot of emails asking us to revisit it. And in my mind, a meeting like that could clarify what we have done and what we already supported, because that's what we did.
If I may, Ms. Carlin,
Please.
you two are saying two different things.
Very two different things,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, I think we're agreeing on the meeting, but we're not agreeing on the intent of the meeting.
Purpose.
But I need a little bit of direction.
Is there anybody that agrees on having a conversation around the authority that was given back in August?
No, I think that's settled.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm not seeing a second hand, is that correct? Okay.
I got two. Gotta bring levity to a
Thank you,
situation, right?
Mr. Peschel.
So-
I didn't clarify myself, express myself very well, I'm sorry.
Ms. Carlin.
I just don't feel like, that we're not health professionals, we're not watching the numbers, and we gave them that job because we're not any of those things.
Okay, I would
So-
remind you, we're not noticed to discuss
Okay, so
this. I
what
just
I'm
need to know
saying
if
is-
you have a request for a future agenda item, that's all I need to know.
I'm just explaining why I
I'm
am
sorry,
not supporting
okay?
that.
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Carlin.
Thank you. So, was there something else you wanted to have on a
no.
future? Okay, okay. Mr. Peschel?
Can we go back to announcements now?
Yes.
Please
Please do.
It's forward, yes.
Please do.
My, with the passing of the facilities referendum, I took some time to kind of reflect upon the history of these schools that we've now been provided the go-ahead to rebuild in our community. And I think it's important at this point to realize that, there's hundreds and thousands of kids that have gone through those doors. There's hundreds of staff, teachers, specialists, principals,
Probably thousands.
staff
It's over
person
100
that
years
have,
old.
that have all worked through that. And I think just want to take a moment to acknowledge the historical aspects of the changing of these schools and the impact on our community. I think it's really important. I mean, I think all of you have probably talked to some teachers today, or in the last couple of days, and they were very much nostalgic about that as well. And not just, I think when we think of Merrill, we think of Merrill being one of the older ones, but Webster Stanley as well, and how those schools are going to change from middle schools to just elementary schools and transition to all of that. I just think it's important just to kind of put that acknowledgement out there of that transition that our community got behind on. So, and then I wanted to piggyback off of Dr. Herzog's statement about veterans. Not only has the Oshkosh North Communities class been instrumental in creating that awesome space outside Oshkosh North, but students in that class are also are just in the process of setting up interviews with veterans of many different theaters right now, and learning from their experiences and everything. And I had the opportunity to connect one of the classes with one of my residents who served in the Korean War, and so I just think it's not just those moments that are teaching moments and reflective moments. It's also the moments that our kids are taking part, in the virtual world, of doing these interviews and everything. So just thought it'd be a good add-on to what you said.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your sharing
Yeah.
that. I wasn't aware of that.
That's
Excellent.
awesome. That's really cool.
Any other announcements tonight? All right, then I'd entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Allison was.
I was second.
I think it was a nanosecond. Please call the roll.
Aye.
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 I'm so hungry.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
All right.
Woo-hoo.